Several of As several of you may know, Commissioner Alvarez is on maternity leave. She had her baby girl a couple of weeks ago, and we're all very excited. We wish her very well and look forward to seeing her at the October meeting. And with that, we'll get started. Jamie, could you please call the roll?
Nadine Burke-Harris.
Present. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Monica Fitzgerald.
Yes, here.
Shana Hazen. Elsa Jimenez.
Present.
Jackie Majors. Molly Munger. I see she's here. She's on mute. Chris Perry.
Present.
I thought Jackie was on. I think, I thought I saw that Commissioner Majors had checked in, so we're looking for her for a minute or two, but there is Commissioner Hazen. Good morning. So I think we're all here, but Commissioner Alvarez.
Yes, good morning, Commissioner Hazen. We were just doing the roll call. So it looks like you are present.
I am present. Good morning,
Thank-
everyone.
Thank you. Good morning. Okay, so we are all here except for Commissioner Majors. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, for today's meeting, I think that it's going to be a good one, an important one, and an impactful one as we take the time to dive into our audacious goal as we look ahead at really starting to coalesce as a coalition. Certainly for me, it feels that way as the new chair, and really looking forward at the vision of the organization and thinking about reflecting on where we are, looking at things like the READY report and understanding how we use what we're learning, what we're seeing in these reports and others to guide us forward and to inform what we want to do and how we want to do it. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And so with that, I will just keep it brief and defer to Camille for a quick overview on the virtual meeting and then go from there. I think you're muted, Camille.
Yes. So again, good morning. Thank you so much. We're now entering into, I can't count how many virtual meetings this will be for all of us. But with that, just to go over one more time how this works. For people who are listening in, we ask that you keep yourselves on mute. If you have a comment or want to make a public comment, if you will raise your hand, you will be called upon and unmuted, and you will be allowed to do that. Commissioners are old pros now at keeping their sound on mute until they want to participate in the discussion. And with that, the only thing I will say is all of you should have received a separate email this morning from Simone with the link to the Zoom for closed session. We will actually go to a different Zoom for closed session. If you haven't received that email, if you could raise your hand, let us know. We will make sure to send it again to you so that you have it for our closed session later on during the meeting. Anybody? Everybody think they have it? Great, good. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Burke Harris, to talk about a conflict of interest.
Thank you so much, Camille. So for our commissioners, please let me know if there are any items on the agenda that presents or potentially presents a conflict of interest for you. Obtaining this information in advance will ensure that I can announce your non-participation on any aspect of that item in compliance with applicable laws. Does any commissioner want to state a conflict on any of the items at this time? Hearing none, thank you very much. You all have also received the executive director and personnel reports electronically. And at this time, I'll ask commissioners, do you have any follow-up questions regarding the executive director's report?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hazen.
And just to clarify, because I didn't know, Camille, will you be talking through any of this or?
One of the things in trying to streamline the meeting a little bit, we thought we would do it in written form. If you had, if you had questions, happy to answer, but no, I hadn't planned on presenting.
Okay, perfect. I just didn't want to
Yeah.
say anything that you were going to say. I am wondering, and I think this was all from the executive director's report, or actually I'll start with personnel. So I know, so there are 2 vacant positions. Are we fully staffed aside from that?
At this time, yes, I think we are. Yes, we are full, except for those 2.
Okay. And how many people do we have? I'm curious sort of what full means because it's varied so much.
40 right now.
Okay. And I think just the reason I asked is just sort of like moving forward, does that feel like where we want to be typically for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think it's historically when it's felt full, it's around 43, 44 people.
Okay.
So I think we're close.
Great. There's a couple other items around the Impact 2020 regional coordination and TA, the hubs. There was reference to the fact that they'll be advancing equity. And I'm wondering how and what's going to be different about this piece of work moving forward from an equity lens.
I think how specifically is something that we're just getting started with the hubs. They're coming together for the first time to talk about the how. The Ready Work is available to all of them as well. So as we train on the Ready Work, which you'll hear about a little later, that will be, they will be able to take advantage and help their regions, put that into place. And I'm sorry, Shannon, you asked one more thing and I'm trying to.
It sounds like it's still being developed. So it's more just around like how and what's going to be different.
Right,
and sort of
right.
What
I
had
think,
existed previously in terms of
Yes.
the work of the hubs.
I
related
think,
to equity.
right. I think the difference will be the focus and really looking at it as a foundational part of the training and professional development that the hubs help to make sure their regions have access to. Previously, as QCC was getting up and running, the professional development was more focused around early learning, around ratings, around those types of issues in the last go around. So the equity focus is really different than it was in the first round with them.
Okay, so
More
that's,
focused.
yeah, can just keep us in the loop as we figure out exactly what equity means, because I think it's a word we and sort of the global we use a lot, and I think it's really important. As a commission, we get really clear what do we mean.
Yep.
I think particularly in this context.
Happy to do that. Sure.
Thank you. those are all my questions.
Thank you. I had a comment that I think is related to your question, Commissioner Hazen, which is I noted in the report that the California Health Interview Survey, the report from the California Health Interview Survey was noting that parents in higher income households and those with employment-based insurance, a usual source of care, higher education levels, who spoke only English at home and whose identified race or ethnicity was non-Hispanic white, were more likely to report that their children received developmental screenings and were asked about developmental concerns. And I think this ties back in as we look at the READY report, right? As we look at, as I was reviewing all of the materials in preparation for this meeting, one of the things that really struck me was the ways that the different work streams really thread together and really tell a story about some important opportunities for us, right? Because in looking at that report from the CHIS data, I see, you know, the brief concludes with support for universal developmental surveillance and screening as recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And my only question there was, do we think that's adequate? Because when we're identifying a persistent disparity, right? Saying, oh, well, it should be universal. Well, we already know that, right? Like everybody knows that it should be universal, but it's not universal. So what are the barriers that are occurring why it's not universal, right? And that's where one of the things that I want to kind of look at and dive into and ask about is this question, are our conclusions and recommendations actually targeted towards addressing the challenges that we see? Because I think generally speaking, you know, when we look at the, you know, any research or data around implementing broad scale clinical interventions like developmental screening, if there's a persistent disparity, you know, I think just recommending again, hey, everyone should have it has been demonstrated to be inadequate, right? So I think there's a place where, as we look broadly across our work streams, whether it's the CHIS work that we're funding, whether it's the READY work, whether it's you know, just broadly across, you know, home visiting, right? That was another place as we're looking at all of these our different work streams. I felt like there may be an opportunity for us to be more more specific and targeted in thinking about how we can improve outcomes.
I think you're exactly right and totally agree. And in fact, yesterday I had the opportunity to be with the executive directors from the counties at their quarterly meeting. And we were talking a little bit about this, that what this points out is not only there's more work to do, but what are the action steps that can result from that really move on those recommendations to ensure that all children are getting screened and being asked about, you know, developmental milestones. So we had the opportunity to meet with Commissioner Perry to talk about the work that she does in Health and Human Services and where those, you know, and I think this is again another opportunity or place for us to look at how we partner with other agencies. So agree.
Any further questions or comments regarding the executive director's report? And just as a clarification, I'll make a note because I don't know if we actually talked about this explicitly, and I know that Camille touched on it at the beginning of this conversation, but one of the things that I'd like to do as chair explicitly is for things like the executive director report to spend our time together in conversation and really dive into the meat. So making sure, so moving away from spending our time in these meetings when we have everyone together, reporting out the same thing that we could have read, right? But really relying on everyone to have read items ahead of time and then really using the time so that we can have that time for that meaty conversation. And I think that's relevant also for the public. The report and the materials are posted and available publicly and online. And so just for members of the public who have been regular visitors to these meetings, I also wanted to call out that shift explicitly so that you all can follow what's going on and know that we won't have that stand and deliver report, but we will have that time, conserve that time so that we can use that for conversation. So thank you. And now, if there's any, I'll go ahead to public comment, if that sounds right, Camille.
Yes, I didn't know if, I know that, as you said, Melissa Stafford Jones of the association has said that she will be presenting today and will comment and didn't have a formal report to all of you, but you will be hearing from her several times over the next hour or two in that way. And then I didn't know, Dr. Burke-Harris, if you wanted to ask commissioners if they had any comments, whether it was about their advisory committee meetings or just anything else in general that they wanted to share with each other or the public, whether it's something they learned.
Yes, yes, sorry, I had thought we were going to take public comment just on the executive director's report.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yep, you're right. So Jamie doesn't have anything.
Okay,
So-
great. Fantastic. And then you mentioned that Melissa Stafford Jones will give her comments interwoven with the agenda items. And so now I'll go ahead and move to commissioner comments. So as mentioned at the April meeting that we've noticed over the last few commission meetings that commissioners have preferred to comment on their advisory committee work during specific agenda items, but we want to expand the advisory committee item to include any general commissioner comments on non-agenda items, or if there's any comments or questions that commissioners wanted to raise at this time. So at this time, does any commissioner want to report an advisory committee meeting in which they participated in, or make general comments on anything not on the agenda? Okay, well, hearing none, we will move forward, and another opportunity for public comment, although nothing was said. Any comments from the public, Camille?
Nope. No, we don't have any.
Okay. All right, so then we'll go ahead and move forward to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion followed by a vote. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless the commission, audience, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. Any agenda item removed will be voted on following the motion to approve the consent calendar. Does a commissioner or a member of the public wish to pull an item?
Dr. Burke-Harris, I'd like to pull item 3C, which are the dates for the upcoming commission meetings to have a little further discussion with commissioners.
Great, thank you so much, Camille. So we'll pull item 3C. And
No.
any other items?
No one from the public is got their hand raised on that either.
Great. So with the exception of item 3C, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Commissioner Jimenez, I move. We approve consent calendar as stated.
Is there a second?
A second.
Jamie, can you do the roll for us?
Yes, Elsa Jimenez,
Aye.
Molly Munger. Jackie Majors,
Aye.
Shayna Hazen.
I actually have a question. So item 3B, page 4. So this is listing all of the impact regional training and technical assistance sites. I noticed in the executive director's report, it mentioned San Diego, what was it? County Office of Ed, but they're not listed on here. And I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't an omission.
I'm sorry, I had somebody else talking to me. Can you repeat the question one more time?
I can. So for item 3B, the ratifications on page 4,
Right.
it lists all the impact training, technical assistance, and coordination hub lead agencies. And in the executive director's report, under the hub lead agency, San Diego County Office of Ed was listed, but they're not listed here. And I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an omission and that this is correct.
It's a timing issue.
Okay.
There are 3 contracts that have yet to be finalized, so you'll see those on the next one,
Okay.
on the next ratification.
Thank you. And I vote aye.
Monica Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Dr. Burke Harris.
Aye. And with that, the consent calendar is approved. And Camille, if you want to go ahead and discuss the item 3C.
Sure. I asked that this item be pulled. I had an initial conversation at our with Dr. Burke Harris last week about the idea of maybe going back in person come October. So thought that wanted to get her thoughts and we discussed it. And kind of thought maybe a hybrid model might be something the commission would want to talk about, or going back all in person or not at all, but wanted to bring it up as we look to October. If we were to go in person, finding a venue, getting things squared away takes a little bit of time. So wanted to open it up to all of you to see how you felt about that and how we would move forward.
And I will jump in. I will say that one of the thoughts that crossed my mind and a suggestion that I wanted to make was the idea of perhaps doing 2 meetings in person and 2 meetings virtually. Because I think there is a great benefit of meeting in person. There's also a great benefit of visiting the different sites around the state, which I think is of great value. And at the same time, recognizing that there are some efficiencies and benefits to having virtual meetings in terms of all of our time away from our loved ones and all of the above. And so that was a thought that crossed my mind. I actually thought further on this, Camille, and we had thought about the October meeting. One of the things that I realized as we were thinking about the potential of having 2 meetings in person and 2 meetings virtually is that it would seem like the January strategic planning meeting would be one that it would be very important to have in person. And so just thinking about that in terms of the cadence and as people are considering the idea, I just want to throw that out there.
Do commissioners have thoughts about that? Anybody?
Go ahead, Commissioner Jimenez.
Yeah, I can support having some of the meetings be in person and some of them continuing to be virtual, or even the option of still having the virtual, because some individuals may not feel comfortable yet traveling or being in a room with other individuals. So I'm open to to whatever the group thinks is best.
Commissioner Perry?
I agree with the goal of meeting in person in January if we can, if everything keeps going in a good direction, and would like to offer my help to the First Five team if we are going to embark on searching for a good space to do that. I'm very open to helping if we want to have a meeting in the Sacramento complex area. I think I've been looking into this a little bit to create a high quality hybrid meeting environment. I'm happy to help with that.
Additional thoughts or concerns anyone may have? Certainly.
In talking a little bit with the executive directors, they hope even if we went back in person, as Commissioner Perry just said, that we'd have a virtual option so that for those that wanted to watch the meeting, that would be available to them. So if there's a motion, that would be great to not only approve the dates, but to amend it to say 2 virtual, 2 in-person meetings in the future, over this next year.
I'd like to make a motion to hold 4 meetings, and tell me if this is right, all of which will be hybrid, or no, 2 of which will be virtual, 2 of which will be hybrid meetings, beginning with the hybrid in January.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Elsa Jimenez,
Aye.
Molly Munger,
Aye.
Jackie Majors,
Aye.
Shayna Hazen,
Aye.
Monica Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Dr. Burke Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion is passed. Thank you so much.
There's a hand.
Excuse me, there was a hand raised,
Oh,
Jamie said, for public comment on this item.
great.
Oh, yes, Hugo Morales.
Hugo Morales. Mr. Morales, you want to go on?
Yes. Let's see. Yes, this is Hugo. Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Hugo Morales. I'm a commissioner of First Five, Fresno County. I want to speak in terms of having a hybrid. Well, first of all, I agree with the motion, but have that option for public engagement. You know, I think that it's an opportunity. I mean, your meetings are open. I assume the spirit is to have open meetings for to be transparent, right, and to have public participation. And I think they would now that we know we can have virtual meetings. It'd be wonderful to have the virtual option. So I just speaking on behalf of again, having the virtual option for public access. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that comment.
Those are all the comments we have on that item.
Great. Thank you, Camille. Now we'll move on to the regular agenda. And the protocol for action items include staff presentations, questions from the State Commission, public comment, deliberation, and voting by the State Commission. There will be a 3-minute per person time limit during public comments. And so we'll move forward to agenda item 4, adoption of our North Star Statement and Audacious Goal.
Great. Happy to get started today. I think we're going to bring up the PowerPoint, which I believe you all have in there in your materials. I always want to say in your binders, but realize you don't have a binder. So in the materials you received. So we're very excited. We can move on to the background. To have you here today to talk about this really important work. So, and give you an update on the status of where we are with how this work is implemented and works with our strategic plan. As you'll all recall, we've been talking about this, and in fact, had two commission meetings in April centered on this work. And during those meetings, your feedback advised staff to use SMART goals to monitor our investments, data to inform our work, and be more explicit around equity, which would be informed by data to better serve children and families of highest need. So we heard you loud and clear. And today we are bringing to you both a North Star statement and an audacious goal for your consideration that would support the strategic plan that was adopted in 2019. So I want to take this time to acknowledge Jackie, David Dodds, Debbie Silverman, and Simon Marquez, who have led us in this work and have tirelessly put in a lot of time and many conversations about how we move forward. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and talk about, here you'll see the purpose of the agenda item, and it really is an outline of what we plan to discuss with you today. We're obviously going to go into further detail in each of these items and hope to get your feedback, your thoughts as we work through it. So with that, don't want to spend a lot of time there. I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, who is leading this work for us, to take over.
Good morning, commissioners. Good to see you virtually all again. We actually just wanted to take a moment to revisit our strategic plan and mission statements to provide a little bit of a backdrop to ground us in the work ahead of us. And we've gotten a lot of questions from the field and how this is, how the new North Star, the North Star statement, the audacious goal is related to the strategic plan. And we, in our minds, our North Star work is very complementary to the strategic plan. And we see that the North Star work as the implementation strategy towards our vision. Specifically, it helps us to operationalize the internal work to move towards the audacious goal that encapsulates the vision and the mission. Core to that North Star and audacious goal work and investments is a strategy continuously integrating equity at all of our decision points, and internal and external, both internally and externally when we work with our partners and within ourselves amongst one another. To that end, we acknowledge that this is an iterative process, right? We are growing, we are learning, and we are really taking to heart that continuous cycle of improvement and always grounding ourselves in equity. At this point, I actually want to invite Catherine Goins from WestEd, who has actually been helping to guide our internal work towards a more equitable and transparent First 5 California. So, Catherine, thank you for being with us today. Is she on?
She's coming.
Just one moment.
She's coming.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Terrific. Well, first of all, it is an absolute honor to speak with you this morning. I think I'm one of the original First Five fangirls. So I will definitely be attending one of the face-to-face meetings. So Dr. Brooke Harris can sign my book, and Chris Perry's book, of course, is right next to it. And so I just want to take a minute to say a little bit about my background so that you know my biases. So I'm currently a division director at WestEd, and I'm also a doctoral candidate in international and multicultural education at the University of San Francisco, where I'm focusing on racial justice in early learning organizations. And last year, I co-authored a book in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, working with children and families. And I was asked to take a moment to give my reflections about First Five California equity, past, present, and future, because I'm an OG and I've been here. This is my 30th year working in the state of California without interruption in the early childhood space. And so I will also preface my comments by saying, no one at First Five has any idea what I'm about to say. So for those of you who know me, it could get interesting. They did not approve my comments. So I have to say that my reflections are my own. First Five is very personal to me. I was born and spent my early childhood years in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, an area that Dr. Brooke Harris is very familiar with. And my early childhood was not ideal. And I know the circumstances and the conditions that are necessary and what a difference that it can make for those of us who are fortunate enough to have those systems and those interventions. And so this work is very personal to me. And I will say that First Five California was a game changer for me. First under Chris, then under Camille. Before First Five California, my state did not talk about systems or quality or communities. It was about how many children can we serve and how many spaces and how many slots. And so First Five California really did change the conversation. It's what I would describe as positive intent. We did as a community, and I say we because I consider myself part of the First Five community as a former commissioner and partner, we did target equity work, but I describe us as thinking of equity as a verb, something that you do. And while we were able to reach a lot of rural counties, a lot of BIPOC children, and there was a lot of success, what I would say is that what was missing, and as Commissioner Hazen asked earlier, what's going to be different, I would say our present is about intentionality. Now, I will say that First Five California brought me in to help with the equity work starting in December of 2019. And they say that because it was pre-George Floyd. I want to counter the narrative that First Five California just got woke. They were actually recognizing before the twin pandemics that this work needed to be done. And so, Dr. Maya Angelou says, you do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. And I believe that we, the counties, all 58 counties, the commission, and First Five California staff, we know better. And the twin pandemics of COVID-19 and the racial reckoning invite us to do better. And so what I'm excited about is this future that I have waited 30 years for, this moment, quite frankly. And what I see different is us seeing equity as a condition. And that in our ideal world, our children, our families, you can't not statistically predict their outcomes. That to me is equity. We all can look at data and know, if you look at the California dashboard, we can look and say, what children are not going to graduate? What children have chronic absenteeism? What children are suspended? Their race, their income, their immigration status should not be predictive. When it is no longer predictive, in my opinion, then we have equity. And so the opportunity in the future that we have moving forward, and I know that Melissa and Camille are going to talk about READY later on, and the counties really have done an amazing job. I want to acknowledge that while we as counties haven't done everything that we needed to do, we have done a lot. And those strengths have to be built on. We cannot ignore the work that has been done. We have to build on those strengths as we move forward. And at the same time, we have to have some very difficult conversations. It's what I call, hopefully, our collective impact phase, where the commission, First Five California, and the counties are all working together to advance equity. And one thing that I will share is that First Five California, all 40 staff, have already started on a year-long journey with me for their own training and advancement to become culturally competent leaders. We've already discussed and explored equity. We've talked about data, not just quantitative data, but the qualitative data from those marginalized voices, because that informs the work. And how we can explore structural inequity, systemic barriers to policy, and how in our everyday actions as culturally competent leaders, we can play our part. These conversations are not easy, but I have to hand it to First Five California. They've been open to very difficult conversations. Folks know I dial direct. I don't beat around the bush because our children can't wait. We have to have these conversations. And the last thing that I will say is one of the things we will be introducing at our next conversation, Dr. Bruce Harris, is this idea of targeted universalism. And you nailed it earlier when you talked about universal goals. And the University of California at Berkeley invites us, Deputy Chief Wong and I talked about this targeted universal, where you have universal goals, but you target the strategies. And we have to be real about finances. We do not have enough money. Right? One of my degrees is in public administration. My mother says, I'm so cheap, I pinch a penny until it cries. We have to squeeze out every dollar we can, but how do we equitize it so that it's with our most marginalized communities? Targeted universalism, as Dr. Burke Harris was talking about earlier, is one strategy that we can begin to use forward. So I would just like to say that acknowledging our past, acknowledging where we are in the present, and being very excited our collective impact future, First Five California has the opportunity to dig in deeper now with our strategies. And I think now Jackie is going to talk more about how that could look. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for just such a wonderful presentation. And I want to add that we've talked about being unapologetic about being change agents and equity leaders in our work daily and ourselves. So really grateful for the expertise that Catherine has already provided us, and looking forward to further conversations and the work actually unpacking internally of what we need to do to create the equitable condition, not an output really, but the condition. All right, so what you have before you is our strategic plan theory of action as we are embarking on our North Star statements and goals, right? So this slide represents a brief overview of the theory of change that was included in your binder. In a little bit more details, there are a few more squares, if you will, in the attachment in your binder. But this is actually just a summary of the key themes, or if I will, if-then statements, and our system levers that highlight First Five California's, what we have been calling our superpowers, right? What do we do well? What is our niche? What is our leverage, if you will, right? The theory of change essentially is a crosswalk between the strategic plan and our data kinders, and the if-then statements are a way to tell a story of the causal changes to support children and families based on our system levers and investments. For example, if First Five California is effective in its role as an advocate, it promotes to federal and state policymakers the importance of safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments as being necessary for children's healthy development. Then policymakers will create policies and fund programs that support a cohesive, responsive system that promotes safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary for children's healthy development, which then promotes agency leads to create and implement cohesive, responsive systems that create safe, stable, nurturing programs and services. which then promotes programs to include trauma-informed considerations when developing their programs and provide training to staff working with children and families on how to create safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments within their programs, which then in turn supports providers working with children and families to use these trauma-informed practices, helping parents and caregivers co-constructing to be responsive, protective, and nurturing with their children. And in the end, ensuring that children have safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. So that is a mouthful, but essentially, and we also know that this is an iterative process, right? We were trying to struggle with this is actually a circular loop, if you will, right? A spiral, right? It goes forward and backward. So when we think about continuous cycles of improvement and implementation, that is ongoing in the background. Again, equity throughout every single decision point and every single lever that we create. So FCA, our role as an advocate, a convener, or connector, catalyst, and broadcaster are not actually mutually exclusive for one another. And so they work in tandem and together. I don't know if we ran this through the Strategic Planning Commission, and I don't know if the commissioners want to add, or we can open up discussion later and talk about the details, because there are a lot of slides in here, but open that up to others if they are willing. So this next slide represents a 3-part monitoring and goal setting framework. As you can see, the why encompasses the North Star statement and an audacious goal that we are requesting for approval and amendments in consideration today. Both are informed by safe, stable, nurturing environments and relationships based on the Surgeon General's roadmap to resiliency. The what includes population indicators, theory of change, and SMART goals. The population indicators support the audacious goal and are informed by safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments. Finally, the how is our actual programming and investments, including project inputs and outputs that will be developed based on the adoption of the SMART goals, which actually in the tool that we've shared with others is one of the very first question is how does this make the population, how does this address equity, right? As we are thinking about new and current investments and looking at the data. So next slide, please. And this is our proposed North Star statement. Healing-centered, trauma-informed systems promote safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary for children's healthy development. And our proposed audacious goal is that in a generation, all children will have safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. We vetted both of these statements with the First Five Association and a few other county partners. And we've talked to, we ran this through the Strategic Planning Commission, and I want to open up at this moment for discussion and amendments on the statement. I know.
Ask if Elsa.
Commissioner Hazen, Commissioner Jimenez, do you want to add to this since you were key thought leaders with us on this development?
Yes, if I may. I was going to wait for the other commissioners. I just want to thank the staff for the countless hours they spent in crafting a North Star statement and audacious goal based on feedback they were hearing from the commissioners from our retreat and then from Commissioner Hazen and myself during our strategic planning discussions, and as well as with the First Five Association and their executive group. I really do think that the North Star statement focuses on the changes that we need to see in terms of making sure that the systems that our family and children are accessing are really, nurturing relationships, creating environments that really help foster the development of children that are healthy emotionally, socially, mentally, et cetera. So I really do appreciate the focus on a systems change. And I think our audacious goal is just that, a very audacious goal. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of really helping to meet this in one generation. So thanks to the staff and to everybody that helped contribute towards creating the North Star statement and our goal for consideration. Thank you.
I would just echo, I don't think I have anything to add to it. Just echo everything Commissioner Jimenez shared. And I think, just to maybe offer a little insight into sort of the process. And I think Jackie reflected this, that this has been an iterative process, and appreciate all the work staff has done, and consistently refining and coming back to make this better and better, and more aligned with exactly what I think we all want to do.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership around that. Commissioner Majors, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you, guys. I loved reading this prior, and I really, really do appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And then we're getting to a place where we're normalizing sort of equity as a just standard practice in our review, our assessment, to the point that one day it just becomes natural for all of us. I love the North Star statement, and I'll have to say, other than a guide, I don't know how else you propose to use it. I think it looks great. The one thing I just want to ask, because it's not, I don't feel qualified to have an ad or any kind of comment on how it should be. But the only thing I see when I look at healing centered, trauma informed systems promote safe, all that is just wonderful. I wonder, although it might be implied within it, the only thing I feel like I'm missing is something that identifies cultural competence. Healing centered, trauma informed systems, I also feel have to be culturally competent. So I'll throw it out there to just say that that's the only thing that I felt like I wasn't hearing in this, that I was sort of hearing in everything else. And just maybe you guys could give me some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so for us, we went back and forth, and I welcome to, Commissioner Jimenez and Commissioner Hazen or others who have worked on this to be part of that conversation. And I think that for us, we were trying to stay high level, and exactly what you said, right? We're getting a stage where equity, and it's part of it, but it doesn't, we are, I don't think we're opposed to adding cultural competence, right, to a North Star statement, right? And for me, is it more than just cultural competence, right? Beyond that, there's the gradients of being, fully inclusive, and so but that's up for the discussion.
Yeah, and the thing I think, and it's just really a space I'm in right now, where I'm really trying to, and I hear you all doing it too, where we're trying, it's accountability, right? Equity is a really sexy word until it has to be applied. And we have to hold ourselves accountable for every piece of what that looks like and what it means, and not just use it as a label. So when again, high level, I think is important, but I also think sometimes high level and generalization is sometimes what makes us miss a very important granular aspect. And, if I thought healing centered, right? It's healing you, it's a space where we are taking everybody from where they are to bring them where they could go. We're acknowledging trauma, creating safety, stability, all that. I do feel like there is somewhat of a component that I still thirst for in there that says that's for me.
Yep.
And that's for the African-American 4-year-old boy in Compton. That it is not sort of this, and again, this is not to take away, I think this is amazing and wonderful. I just needed to express the sort of what I felt like I was missing, might be missing in this.
Yes, acknowledge that. And the Healing Center came from the community, and reflecting back on, I forgot, Stephen Gwynwright's kind of work around this, and Dr. Brooke Harris has her hand up, so I won't talk any further. And then I see Commissioner Perry also after. So Dr. Brooke Harris.
Yeah, I think it was Sean Ginwright that you were.
Sean, sorry.
Yeah. So I had a similar sentiment, but a slightly different approach or suggestion for an approach for the North Star statement. So my reflection on the North Star statement, first of all, thank you for the incredible work. This is really fantastic. I'm excited that we're doing this, and there's obviously a huge amount of thoughtfulness that has gone into it. The addendum that I wrote in my notes was that healing-centered, trauma-informed systems promote safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary for children's healthy development and to reduce inequities. My focus was more on including reducing inequities as a concrete outcome that we're driving towards, that we can measure ourselves against, that we can measure the performance of our grantees against, right? That we can really hold ourselves accountable to in terms of the having that part of our North Star. And part of the reason why I tend to be more outcomes focused is that from just my own bias, I feel like that is what, if there is one kind of the hard and fast thing that we're going to look at, what I want us to hold ourselves accountable to are outcomes, right? So however these programs are delivered, are they reducing inequities? Are they maintaining inequities? Are they exacerbating inequities? And if they're not reducing inequities, then what regardless of what the components are, then it feels like we have more work to do. And that was my thought. My other suggestion on our audacious goal, and I know having things be really concise is fantastic, so I don't know if this feels redundant. The thing in my mind, and I just wrote it down and we can take it or leave it, but for the audacious goal where we said in a generation, all children 0 to 5 will have, and then I suggested adding the word the, so the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to achieve healthy development. Simply because, again, it allows us, it gives us more, it allows us to have a yardstick of saying whether or not we have achieved our goal. Like, do all kids have some safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments, or do they have, like, how do we assess that? And when we think about the next steps in terms of setting SMART goals and doing it, all of those things, the piece that feels important is to being able to say, well, how do we know if what kids have is enough, right? Or if we're doing our job well enough, if it's adequate. And we'll know that when children are having healthy development, right? And so that was the piece, as they say in medicine, they say titrate to effect, which is essentially keep going until you get the outcome that you're looking for. And so it felt important to highlight the outcome that we're looking for in that audacious goal.
Makes sense. Commissioner Perry, Commissioner Hazen, I think Commissioner Munger, and then back to Commissioner Majors. So that's my sequence, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Deputy and Commissioners, for the work on this. So exciting to see our earlier conversations result in these concrete proposals. I really appreciate it so much. And I think everything the chair just said, I would echo. There probably needs to be a little bit more fine tuning of the two statements to capture some of these additional nuances that are actually critical to ensuring that we've accomplished our goal of creating these two statements. And so I'm just supportive of the process, anxious to see us refine the wording to capture what Commissioner Major and the chair are saying about cultural competence and equity, and in a sense, making the child-centered language more prominent, perhaps than a feature of the system, such as being healing-centered or trauma-informed. I think we're featuring the system versus the child. And when we feature the child, center the child, then we can bring in the components of the system we're trying to affect, and by when and how much I think the magnitude question would go in the audacious section. North Star is the essentially unattainable goal. It's so big, it's not attainable, but you always strive for it. The audacious goal is one that can be achieved in a number of years. So I love that you've got them both, that we're striving for both, but one has more of a sort of a metric in it and one is a bit more aspirational. So thanks, everybody.
Commissioner Hazen?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back and really validate what Commissioner Majors said around cultural competence and maybe even going further on being culturally responsive. And I think those were some things I was thinking about when this, I think, close to, or maybe this version was presented at our committee, and it was specifically around the term healing centered, which, full disclosure, I wasn't familiar with. That it has a very specific meaning. And so for me, it was really helpful to understand what that meant. And I'm not sure Jackie or anyone else for the team, do we want to share what healing centered means? Because as I learned about it, I was surprised that healing centered actually includes being culturally grounded, and was happy to understand that it meant that. But for me, it wasn't a term I was familiar with. And if we're using it, I think it's helpful for us all to be on the same page about the meaning of it. And if it's meant to encapsulate and reflect cultural responsiveness, that we be clear about that.
Thank you for.
Can I just add that actually both healing centered and trauma informed, both embedded in their definitions is cultural humility, cultural responsiveness, and cultural competency. So those are, when I read it, I understood that in those meanings.
So appreciate the prompts, Commissioner Hazen, and those of us who read Wainwright's work or had trainings by him understood it. But we realized that this is a statement for the world, and so we had to be realize that not everybody is familiar. But I agree that I think even with staff, we were leaning towards kind of like we understood. But essentially, we always say where I'm from is by name and by need, right? Like healing centered trauma informed does include, when you are healing centered, you see the whole person, you see the whole child, the whole system, and the system should understand the individuality and the importance of what you come to with the door. It's not, again, I go back to, it's not who you are, it's what happened to you. So understanding and seeing people, that's what I mean when I was trying to explain healing centered in the strategic planning committee meeting. Camille, I see that you want to explain a little bit further about that.
No, go ahead. They all have their hands up. I don't want to interrupt.
So maybe we'll go through the questions and then we can have further discussion, but absolutely right. And our intention was that Healing Center and Trauma Informed has incorporated all of those. But again, I don't believe that we're, again, part of discussion opposed to amending the proposed statement to be more explicit for folks who are not as familiar. So I don't remember the sequence in which I did I say, was it Commissioner Munger, Commissioner Majors, then Commissioner Fitzgerald? Thank you all for your patience as we are.
All right.
You're on, Commissioner Munger.
Yes, okay. I agree with the observation by Commissioner Perry that there's something here, and I think that that Dr. Brooke-Harris was also alluding to it. This statement in the proposed North Star statement seems to be focused on systems again, and we're trying to kind of tweak it to reflect these other values, but it remains a statement that's about a system rather than about children. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to edit it to reflect what we really mean and the targeted universalism that we're really looking for. So I would encourage the drafters to try some other wording where you're not saying that our focus is the system. the system does this, the systems promote. You know, really, systems that provide care that is healing-centered, trauma-informed, culturally competent, and equitably administered, that kind of care will promote safe, stable, nurturing relationships. But the system itself is not, you know, really, it's impersonal, and it's often exactly what gets us into trouble. We're social engineers that try to create, you know, little, you know, rewards and punishments, and, you know, metrics and motivators. And then it doesn't really work for everybody. And I think it's because we focus too much on the system and not enough on the outcome for the kids, not enough on the children and their families. So nobody loves data more than I do. Nobody understands, you know, better than Advancement Project that data is your friend and that it will show you what's going wrong. But data will show you what's going wrong. If you want to fix it, you have to focus often not on a system, but on holes in a system, on shortcomings in a system, and trying to always go back to a general rule and a general program and a general approach to fix the system is often not what you want. What you really want to do is you want to say what it's doing for, you know, 90% of the kids, or, you know, whatever percentage of the kids is working, but the kids that we care about are not that kid, those kids. The kids that are falling through the cracks are the ones we care about, the ones that we have to be concerned about, because, you know, you're not concerned about kids who already have, you know, safe, stable, nurturing, blah, blah, blah. You know, we're concerned about the ones who don't. And so I don't think we've quite hit the nail on the head yet in terms of focusing on the kids who are not well served by general systems. And then the other thing I'd like to say is I totally agree with Dr. Burke-Harris about the titrating to effect. That's exactly right. We need to add that clause. The proposed audacious goal seems fine to me with the addition of Commissioner Burke-Harris, but I would send the proposed North Star statement back for a whole different look at it. It just isn't getting to what we're talking about, in my opinion. It's not getting us there.
Yeah. So over the last several months, we've also had a lot of discussions about system. And again, I'm looking at Commissioner Hazen and Commissioner, because we went back and forth at this level too. And I don't know if you want to add that we actually don't want to blame communities and families being culturally responsive, all of that, that it actually, because the system has shortcomings and embedded errors or like systems issues that have been created, right? So I don't know, I'm really cognizant, and we had deep discussion about the importance of identifying the system responsibility. And I don't know, Commissioner Jimenez or Hayes, I know there are other hands raised, but I also wanted to share kind of the thinking from the subcommittee around why we landed on the system level, if possible. And I don't want to put words in Commissioner Hazen or Commissioner Jimenez's mouth. Or
am I going out of turn if I speak
no,
on?
No, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
And thank you, Commissioner Munger. And I absolutely 100% agree with your outcome that you want. It's about kids. But I want to go back to what in the statement that Catherine Goins make about she wants data not to be predictive. And in order to do that, it's not about tweaking the system or fixing it, and it's about dismantling it, right? And I think that what I love about this North Star statement, and again, right, I mean, we could write we could have loads of discussions about what healing-centered trauma-informed means, right? And obviously deeply embedded in Ginwright's work, but healing-centered, if we had a discussion about what healing-centered and trauma-informed meant, we're not going to get to words like, it's not going to be about equity. The floor is cultural competency, right? The audacious ceiling is about decolonizing, anti-racist, abolitionist, right? It's dismantling these systems. If we want to create safe and healthy environments for children, that it needs to be overhauled, right? Not tweaked. And it is the systems actually that are keeping children oppressed and sick and unhealthy, right? So there's so much wonderful thing to this. And I just really, the word audacious has me so inspired that I don't want us to stick with the words of the day that that we want to reach beyond. I think we want language that is audacious, that that makes people think, what does that mean to get there? So I really like healing centered and trauma informed. But I also understand that a lot of people don't understand the deep meaning and the deep work that takes. So I'm wondering, again, to keep a North Star statement short, do we actually have like a richer, not even a full white paper, do we have a richer explanation of what that entails, where we really challenge people, you know, especially today, we can't talk about equity. We have got to talk about anti-racist pedagogy, right? We've got to talk about decolonizing our economics and our politics and our education and our healthcare, right? So I actually really appreciate that, but I think we can do something that actually deepens it and really is audacious and forward. So I really appreciate the work on this and all of the exciting and I know everybody had to do a tremendous amount of work to get to this place. So, but I really want to challenge us to truly be audacious.
Back to Commissioner Majors and then Chair Brooke Harris, if that's okay. So I think Commissioner Majors was waiting for that.
Oh, great. And hopefully mine will be quick. It was just a thought from earlier. Thank you, Commissioner Hazen. I really don't know what healing centered means. I'm trauma-informed care and I work in trauma-informed care. And yet I still think that although implied and embedded in these terms, it becomes an assumption. It doesn't become a call out of cultural competency. And I also just want to say, while cultural competency is also sort of a buzzword, for me, how I was looking at it to maybe give you more food for thought as we go into this, thinking about our work. And Commissioner Munger, I certainly get, you know, system versus child, but systems are the ones that are oppressing and moving children forward. You know, it kind of is the determining factor. But the reality of my cultural competency is seeing competency and cultural competency as a focus more on the who designs it, the who delivers it, the who evaluates it, and the who receives it, because systems are built by individuals. And when we look at many of the currently existing systemic racial infrastructures, they weren't designed by the people they serve. And so as we look at our grants, our RFPs, who we work with, and we're starting to put in intentionally that you have, minority or culturally competent staff that are part of the design and the think tank around the architecture of the system. I feel like that is an important place for us to be in terms of that cultural expectation and that accountability, and challenging those things to be different, not just from the outcomes are critical, they're important, and they're long-term successes. The cultural competency is defining a little bit more the journey and who defines that journey. So that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
Chair Brooke Harris.
Oh, well, I have some thoughts, and I think my thoughts are going to require some trust on the part of our commission members, because they're a little potentially, challenging, I think, to some of the things that we've been talking about. But I'm going to be vulnerable and say what I'm thinking and feeling right now in a couple of different ways, recognizing that I may not be right, but I want to put my thoughts out here into the collective, and have a lot of trust in our our shared goals together. So I think in terms of the conversation about systems, I do, my big concern there is, you know, having worked in Baby Hunters Point and having seen child after child after child after child, where the child is struggling, the family is struggling, the teachers, the educators are struggling to support the family. There's a social worker who's struggling to, and you look at the system and it creates the same thing over and over and over and over again. And we oftentimes focus on the individual, that individual family, that individual neighborhood, that individual whatever, and we say we're throwing out these little life rafts for these individual kids and families and communities over and over and over again, and then definitely taking a step back and joining government and looking at the way that we set up the infrastructure of our societies and really coming at it from this public health perspective. It has really influenced me to focus more on a systems-based approach, because I think that when we look at a system that when we look at the outcomes and we say, okay, this works for 98% of kids, I don't think we have many things that work for 98% of kids. But let's say it works for 90% of kids. But of those 90% of kids, that the 10% of kids that it doesn't work for, why are they so often disproportionately Black and Latino, right? And Pacific Islander? Like, why does that keep happening over and over again? It doesn't just happen in Bayview. It doesn't just happen in Crenshaw. It doesn't just happen in Watts. It doesn't just happen in San Diego. Over and over and over and over and over again. Or why is it that who it doesn't work for are low-income kids?
Yeah.
Or our rural communities. This is over and over and over and over again. In fact, the way you describe it is a person looking at it, a statistician or an epidemiologist would say it's systematic, that these outcomes are generated systematically. So our charge as First Five, we can't go and throw our arms around every child or every family. It feels like our important prerogative is to change the system. Because if we don't change the system, nobody's going to change the system. We're First Five. We're the only people who can change the system. And we rely on setting up a system that enables all of our partners on the who are doing the hard work, the day-to-day on the ground, the nonprofits, the community agencies, the local First Fives, that they're set up for success to serve families in a different way. And it feels, I would argue, and I do this so respectfully, Molly, because I hear and I share your passion, but I would say that our unique role is to focus on systems and to set up a system that better serves vulnerable children and communities and families. The other tricky thing that I want to say, similarly, from when I was reading the READY report, a concern that I had. So let me say, I was very heartened, very happy, very excited to see a focus on cultural humility, on a lot of the training about around race, ethnicity, diversity, inclusion work. I think all of that is really important. But what I worry about is that my focus, again, is extremely heavily on outcomes. I feel like I've spent a lot of time working in vulnerable communities where people spend a lot of time on the training so that everyone feels like they have that level of cultural competency, but the outcomes for the vulnerable kids don't get any better. And I want to make sure that as we highlight and focus on the important prerequisites of which cultural competency, cultural humility are important prerequisites, what I worry is that people achieve that and then stop there. And what I want to make sure that we set up our language is to be clear that what we're holding folks accountable for are outcomes, equity in outcomes for our children, right? And so, I feel, and I just say that to say, and I'm sure we've all seen it, right? Where, you know, I think we've all seen it where the other piece of it also that resonates with me is also in reading the Ready report, and we'll get into that, but the level of hesitancy or the level of concern or the level of trepidation around, well, we don't feel like we're totally ready. We don't feel like we have the tools, the information. We don't have a high population. You know, we don't have a very diverse population, so we don't know how we can do this work. And it's like, I want to be really clear that everyone can have a very direct, very important, clear, and straightforward role in improving, in driving towards equity. You don't have to be a person of color. Everyone, I want to say, hey, these are the outcomes that you are going to be held accountable to. I don't care if you're in Butte County, LA County, Alameda County, these are the outcomes that you're going to be held accountable to. So you can use all of the best practices that we want to share with you. You can get innovative and bring in some of your own resources or whatever, but this is what you're going to be held accountable to. And that is where I am. My bias always is towards, we have to have cultural competency, cultural humility, all of those different pieces, along with a bunch of other stuff as well. I mean, I think this is all really important, but for me, it feels important to be very clear that what we are holding ourselves accountable to is how kids are doing. What are the outcomes? How are our kids and families doing? And that's the piece that I want to make sure that we have really strongly.
I have a question. Can I ask you, Dr. Burke-Harris, whether the outcome in question is the safe, stable, nurturing relationship and environment? No.
No, the outcome is, and that is healthy development.
Right.
That's outcome.
But our theory of change is that if we insist that all children have a safe, stable, nurturing environment and relationships in an environment that is necessary for their healthy development, then along with other things that have to happen, then they will have better outcomes. This is the piece we've chosen to work on, which is safe, stable, nurturing relationships, environments. They also have to have food, they have to have shelter, they have to have, I mean, you know, they have to go to school. I mean, but yeah, the bullets have to stop flying in their neighborhoods. I get that. But in this document, we're focusing on the creation of safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments for all children, right? That's our focus here in this North Star statement and goal. Is that right?
Well, that's the reason why my suggestion for the audacious goal was to add to the end of that statement that, you know, all children have the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to achieve healthy development. Right? Like that was my suggestion.
I see. Okay. All right.
Because that's the outcome that that I'd like to see us hold ourselves accountable to.
Okay, all right. Well, I understand that. That's very helpful to understand it. And I wanna say, since you're kind of,
Look at this. So.
you're responding to what I said, and I want to respond then to what you said, because I really don't think we're going to be far apart here. I think we're going to be like exactly the same. I understand about the system. I understand how the system has to be better. I understand what was wrong about the way I put it. I get that. I still think that we need to say something here that makes clear what you're saying and what Commissioner Fitzgerald and what Commissioner Majors are saying. Everybody's kind of saying the same thing, which is we need to reform the system. We need to make the system better. I mean, that's really what we're saying. We're saying the system doesn't work the way it should. It's leaving kids behind. It's not trauma-centered healing-centered, trauma-informed, equitably administered, and culturally competent. It isn't. It's not its fault. It's well-meant system. It was created by well-meaning people, but it just doesn't, it fails too many. And so we have to fix it. And I think that's what we're saying. And why don't we just say that? Why don't we say for our proposed North Star statement that we can say something like safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments are necessary for all children's healthy development. We support reforming systems so that they become healing-centered, trauma-informed, equitably administered, and culturally competent. So that reform, change, fix the system is put, because what was bothering me was, I'm an old lady. I was part of these social engineering efforts, the creation, these sort of socially well-meant, but not necessarily well-informed things have been part of my life. And this gives me a pass at some level to say this. I read it as you are giving people, well, I don't want to be too hard on myself. I really have tried, but anyway, you're giving the system too much of a pass here is what I think. I think we need to say outright that we think the system needs to be improved, reformed, fixed, whatever word. I mean, we don't have to be crazy confrontational, but we have to get across the fact that we think it's not working and we need to fix it. And that our role at First Five is to use our levers of change to make it better so that it works better for all the kids, not just some of the kids. I mean, that's really what I'm saying. I think we're all saying we need to fix the system.
I think that's very thoughtful, Molly.
Commissioner Majors, is your hands up in queue or? All right, so.
No.
Okay, Commissioner Jimenez.
I just want to appreciate all the comments made by the commissioners, because we had similar discussions in our strategic planning committee with staff, and really wanting to get more specific in the North Star and the audacious goal. And I think the intent of these two statements is to be very high level and really having the what answered in the indicators that we select to measure whether or not we are achieving that audacious goal and working towards that North Star statement. And that really then our investments, what strategies we choose to implement is really going to be the how in terms of showing whether or not we're making progress. And I wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Burke-Harris that we have to be outcome oriented, that we have to set milestones that we want to reach, and then design strategies that help us and redirect if those strategies are not helping us achieve those outcomes, which we all know is really kind of closing the gaps that exist between those that are supported by the systems that have been created and those that are not, and really using our voice and our power to dismantle the systems, as Commissioner Fitzgerald said, because it's almost like we have to crumble everything that's been put in place and redesign and build it with the lens that it needs to be. To comment to Commissioner Majors about the people that are going to be served by those systems really have to lead the discussion in terms of how they need to be designed so that they are serving those that have not been served. And I mean, I still support the statements as written, again, because we had these same level discussions in terms of trying to be more specific, but really the intent is for them to be at a very high level. And then the how and the why are then what comes after these two statements are adopted that really get at, you know, the indicators that we're using, what are the strategies we're implementing, what are the training topics that need to be implemented so that we can achieve these two things.
Molly, I don't know if you were going to say something. Your box lit up.
Oh, no, I've spoken a lot. I want to hear what others think.
I am wondering as we, so the notes that I have, and I don't know, am I getting, I want to just kind of check for understanding, my own understanding as we are digesting. Majority of the commissioners are okay with staying at the systems level.
Yes.
For the North Star statement.
Yes.
Yes, okay, okay, I gotcha. And the other thing is also an agreement to incorporate, and I think it's the same. I actually like both the addition of maybe culturally competent healing center trauma informed. Does that feel about right? Like in that statement, yes or no?
And equitably administered.
And at the end, and to reduce inequities.
Yeah, equity, I just want to highlight with the equitably administered, I think that's a process, and I'm more interested in the outcome. So if knowing that there's a limited amount of real estate in a audacious goal or in a North Star statement, my strong bias is towards, and I had said, and reduce inequities, but I was not, I see my own bias in that it should say to and eliminate inequities.
And eliminate, okay, and to eliminate, okay.
Yeah, what,
Jackie?
Excuse me, but you by asking whether all the commissioners wanted to stay at the systems level, you know, I don't yet hear there's consensus for the statement as written, if that's what you're asking. I think we're all convinced that we need to do something in this statement to indicate that the system needs to be changed.
So Commissioner Jimenez has her hands. So my question was that there was some conversation and discussion about systems or not systems, and so you know, there are a couple. I just wanted to
yes, I understand that, but I understand which of my remarks made you ask the question. I just didn't want us to. I think you're trying to form a consensus here, and I didn't want you to. I think you need to break down your question, which is, do we have a majority support for the thing as written, or do we want to say something about, yes, we'll focus on systems, but it has to be stronger on changing the system?
Correct. I haven't asked the secondary question. My first question is, are we first okay staying at the high level?
Yes.
And that's the secondary question. You're correct. You're correct. But the second, thank you. The second question was going to be that follow-up, but I still think we need to noodle on it a little bit more before I ask that second question, because I'm trying to kind of capture all the comments. Commissioner Fitzgerald, you also raised your hand, and then no.
I'm going to wait a few minutes until the noise is less at my house. Sorry.
Okay, and then again, just checking for our, this isn't yet this is actually for consideration. Really great discussion, and I appreciate it. Right, and so we'll noodle, and I've asked staff to, when we come up, I think what will be helpful is for us to go to the rest of the slides about how are we actually measuring it, that population level data. Right. I also want to note, as we are noodling, the other amendment, which I think also is a good one, and hopefully folks aren't just with it when a thumbs up, thumbs down, is the addition of, in a generation, all children will have the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to achieve healthy development.
Right.
Right. Okay. So
right.
that is okay. So there's no further. So I just wanted to capture those thoughts. We will come back at the end for that second question, right? So I just wanted to, as we kind of noodle on that a little bit, And I do believe, I'm gonna hand this over to David Dodds, who will go through the how and the what, how are we actually measuring, right? Like there's lots of discussion earlier about what does this look like? And how are we actually holding ourselves and others accountable to, you know, in effect, to this audacious goal and the North Star statement. Remember, the North Star is what is driving us, what's driving staff. And I also agree that we probably should have a white paper explaining how we got there. And then the audacious goal is that general goal. But then the critical question I hear you all asking is, what does that even mean, right? And so I'm going to hand that over to David Dodds. David, I believe you are.
Jackie,
you're on.
before you do that really quickly, I had seen Commissioner Jimenez with her hand up, and I wanted to make sure that she had a chance to.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Burke-Harris. I just put my comment in the chat for the panelists to continue to noodle on. So we can circle back when it sounds like Jackie wants us to then finish going through the presentation and then come back to kind of finalize the goal. So thanks for the acknowledgement.
I apologize, Commissioner Jimenez. Thank you, Dr. Burke-Harris. Okay, David, are you?
Good morning, commissioners. Yes, this is David Dodds. I'm the Deputy Director of the Evaluation Office at First 5 California. So I appreciate this discussion, and I hope these next two slides will provide a little bit more clarity on our thinking about how data relates to this framework of the North Star, the audacious goal, and the theory of change, and then now coming to data. So we started with a list of 120 possible indicators that could be related to safe, stable, and nurturing. And we quickly realized that that is way too many indicators to try to grasp and understand. And so we came up with this matrix that has, at this current stage, we're thinking of 12 defining indicators. So the key part of the matrix on the left hand has the priority areas from the strategic plan, which are child health, child development, and family functioning. And then across the top, we also see the key themes of safe, stable, and nurturing, which come from our audacious goal and a North Star statement. Additionally, then, we propose 3 additional indicators, which would be contextual. For example, things like poverty or housing, and those kinds of things that are important for understanding the context of our work. So we have met with the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee a number of times throughout the last few months, and we continue to work with them to finalize these indicators. We are also working with contracted experts who have worked previously with early childhood data, and we will continue to do so in the near future. So again, this is a work in progress that we continue to develop with the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee. So we can go to the next slide. So I hope that this next slide may answer some of the questions you have about how do we go from the audacious goal to actually measuring what we're doing, what are we achieving? And so we had a lot of discussion in creating this slide, but so let me start with the audacious goals at the top. And then on the left side, you see kind of these levels of data. So we have a population level indicator, SMART goal, the inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes. So in this case, the example we're using is the percent of children ages birth through 5 who have received a developmental screening in the past year. So as you mentioned, Dr. Burke-Harris, in your comments about the California Health Interview Survey, this is something that we could measure, and we want to know more about in terms of disparity, but also what can we achieve towards reducing those disparities. So what we see then is that a SMART goal supports measurement using a time-bound framework within the constraints of First 5 California investments and programs. So for example, by 2025, every family served by First 5 California's funding will complete a developmental screening on their child. That would be a SMART goal. Well, what are the inputs that are related to First 5 California's work in that goal? So currently we have the impact investment on visiting coordination, the Kit for New Parents, and advocacy and policy work that we engage in, all of those could be oriented towards that SMART goal. Then we would ask, well, what are the outputs? So in that case, we want to know who is reached, which children, and by which category. What strategies do programs use to reach the people reached, and then who is not being reached. And then ultimately the outcomes are related to children, and we're asking, are they better off because of these investments and activities? So I also want to add that an equity lens will inform all of the data above. So as we go forward in this work, one of the key considerations for identifying the final set of population level indicators and SMART goals is the data that we have available or the data that we can collect that are related to equity. So for example, we would, currently we're considering categories such as race, ethnicity, language, income, immigrant status, and other kinds of categories that can inform us on our equity progress. And then, of course, another thing that I think is possibly implied with these, not only about collecting the data, is then we ultimately have to develop measures. So first, if we have the data, then we can start to construct things like percentages or disparity ratios or other kinds of measures that inform us in eliminating inequities. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, wow, what a great conversation. Still, not quite through yet, but what we wanted to talk to just to show for you, given all you've heard this morning, where we headed. And so our plan is to come back periodically beginning in October to share the progress of this work. So as previously stated, we plan to continue to work with our Strategic Plan Advisory Committee to work on the implementation of the activities listed on the slides and that you heard David talk about. We're clear, this is not a short-term project, but a way of doing business across our entire agency for the long term. So it also provides both an internal and external way of implementing our strategic plan. So with that, we are happy to answer questions. I think we have, as we look to answer those before you actually come back and noodle on Jackie's second question and possibly get to a place of adopting a North Star statement and an audacious goal. So at this time, I'll just ask commissioners, do you have questions in general that we haven't already talked about or discussed? Huh? Molly? Commissioner Munger?
Yes, on David's slide, if we could go back to it.
Sure. Yes.
I thought we had two, the example. Which two?
Which one, Molly? There were two.
I think it was the last one before.
Last one?
Yeah.
I just sent it to you in Teams too. Thank you for your patience as we are figuring out technology.
I'm sorry, was the indicators or the example?
No, it's the next one. It's the next one.
There you
This
go.
one. All right. No.
Whoops, sorry.
That is the question though, so. we'll go-
There
we
you go.
Okay. When I read this, I certainly appreciate the effort to make things concrete. And I thought this was very helpful to choose developmental screening as a kind of a model. And to that end, I just wanted to suggest a habit of mind that I think will be helpful. Here we say that we're going to achieve a goal. We're going to work that goal through the home visiting, et cetera, the impact. These are the programs that we're going to try to motivate to do this work of making sure every child has a screening. And then we go to who was reached, what strategies did the program use? And I was struck by the tense of the verbs. Because I'd like to suggest that when you're into systems change and you're trying to add things that are checkpoints to people's work, you know, we've got this disparity in developmental screenings. We want to fix that disparity. We want the system to not have that kind of a disparity in it. You really want to watch it as it goes forward, you know, checking in every few months. How's it going? We've motivated these programs to work on this problem and adjust their approaches, adjust their systems to deliver a better, a less disparate outcome on screenings. Let's not wait to the end of it and then say who was reached, what happened. Let's do something that's more partnerly and co-building and work with our partners to check in with them and see how it's going while we do it, because we'll learn things this way. When you're into change and improvement, you want it to be a two-way street. You want to find out, you know, how's it going? Maybe one county's finding the way they're doing it is really racing ahead and they're doing terrifically, and somebody else is having a hard time, and you can cross-pollinate. I just wanted us to capture something of that type of work here again, that this slide put me in mind of.
Dr. Burke Harris?
Yeah, I want to be sensitive as I take my responsibility very seriously in making sure that we are timely and sticking with our agenda and moving forward. And so I wanted to just take a moment to reflect on where we are with this agenda item right now and see if there's a thoughtful way for us to move forward. We have a North Star statement and an audacious goal, and we have had a really meaty, substantive discussion, which I'm very, very grateful for, as well as the excellent work of the staff in really being responsive to the questions of commissioners. It sounds like where we are is that for the North Star statement, commissioners are suggesting that there's a little bit more work to be done to highlight the fact that the system is not what it needs to be, and to include concepts of equity, how we're driving towards equity and eliminating inequities, as well as notions of cultural humility or cultural competency. But it feels like there's a little bit more work to be done there. With the
Yeah, wait.
Sorry, we're gonna put up our, like, staff is typing a possible amendment, like capturing that, so we wanted to put it up for, as we are live amending the.
Great.
And
With
so,
yeah, I was just going to say, with the audacious goal, it sounds like we're pretty close. The focus of the discussion was the conversation around the audacious goal sounded more like we were closer to consensus. And so I think from that standpoint, it's, what is your proposal, Jackie? Do you have a proposal?
We have put it up. We're happy to go back and retweak it, but we just wanted to make sure we captured the major points, and if we still need to go back and retweak either the audacious goal or North Star, this is what we were with our non-video friends from West Ed had kind of sent this over for consideration.
So do you want to read it?
So the North Star statement is safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to eliminate inequities in children's healthy development. I think it's probably create safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments necessary to eliminate inequities in children's healthy development by reforming systems so they are healing centered, culturally competent and trauma informed, or we can do culturally humble and trauma informed. So that's what we're kind of noodling with a little bit more. right? It doesn't seem like we're 100% there even as we're typing this out, but I just wanted to make sure that we had the major concepts in the North Star statement.
So I would say I'm a little bit reading the faces of fellow commissioners. I would suggest my proposal, or I would move that we ask the staff and the strategic planning committee to continue work on the North Star statement, and that we move to adopt the audacious goal as amended, so that we can move forward and incorporate the substance of this conversation into the next phase of this work.
Second.
Dr. Burke Harris, at some point too, you'll want to take public comment, just before we vote.
Yeah.
We would want to do that. Okay.
And then Commissioner Fitzgerald, you raised your hand early on. I apologize, just saw that.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. If we're going to have this continue to noodle it and not approve this right now, I'm challenged by the word reform. But that's a larger discussion of, systemic oppression. You don't reform a system based in white supremacy. We need to dismantle it. So anyway, I think playing around with the statement and bringing it back would probably be the best thing.
It's been moved and seconded.
So the motion is to come back with another revision of the North Star statement, but adopt the audacious goal as amended.
Yes.
And then I think that was the motion by Chair Burke Harris, and then seconded by Commissioner Munger. Did you guys?
Yeah, okay. Appreciate that. Yeah. So I don't know if we have anyone. Do you want us to check for public comment?
It looks like Commissioner Hazen and Commissioner Jimenez have hands raised. Oh, just Commissioner Hazen.
I'm wondering if other commissioners think it might be helpful that when we come back, that maybe, I know we have thrown around the idea of maybe having a white paper or something additional context that sort of clarifies intent. I see some nodding heads, because I think that what we were asking folks to do was a lot of reading between the lines, and there were a lot of things that we thought maybe were implicit. So I'm wondering if it would be helpful to, yes, come back with a refined statement, but also some kind of accompanying document.
I totally agree with that, because I thought it was a really rich statement that had a lot more to it than people might understand. So I really loved the original statement and thought a lot of what we're getting at was there with some additional context. I'm 100% behind that.
All right, Chair Burke Harris, I will raise my hand back up if that's okay. My question was more around process. So if the commission doesn't approve the North Star statement now and sends it back to the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee, which Commissioner Hazen and I will continue to work with staff to ensure that we're capturing the rich discussion that we had today. Does this preclude the staff from moving forward in terms of developing SMART goals, indicators? It's more of a process question. Are we delayed now and can't start that process till October? Or in concept, the audacious, the North Star statement and concept is, headed in the right track. So I hope it doesn't preclude us from kind of advancing in our strategic planning process.
We assume not, but would love to get the confirmation from the commission that we can still, everything that David Dodds presented, that we can still kind of identify those SMART goals that are aligned with audacious goals as we work through a white paper for the North Star statement.
I would suggest that we, as a commission, could direct or recommend that the team move forward with incorporating the concepts that and the feedback that we've given in this process. I think it is, if we don't have the exact wording of the North Star statement, it is a little bit more tricky. But I think that there's certainly quite a lot of work that can be done as recognizing what are the key components of what we're trying to include.
We would agree with you. So I don't see anyone shaking their head no. So I'm going to take that as staff will continue to work on SMART goals and all of those things while we continue to refine the North Star statement. At this time, I don't know if you want to call for public comment.
Yeah, so let me, at this time, I'll go ahead and amend my motion to have the staff continue work on the North Star statement, and then also return with a proposal for a North Star statement and a deeper explanation of what that North Star statement means. And then as well as adopting the audacious goal as amended.
I accept that as a friendly amendment. The second would seem to still be in place.
Okay, so now we'll go ahead and take public comment.
Francine Rod from Monterey. You're up, Francine.
Hi, Francine.
Somebody got her?
Yes, I'm here now. Thank you so
There you
much.
are.
Thank you so much, commissioners, for the thoughtful discussion around this. And I have to say, I really appreciated it. And also Catherine Goins' comments. I am also really hopeful that as the work moves forward with identifying the SMART goals, that some of that work will happen in coordination with the counties in terms of looking at the specific areas for investment, so that the goals can be co-created together. And that, as Catherine Goins mentioned, in terms of looking at systems and systems change, I know that it's really hard to find existing indicators for that, but what a wonderful, audacious work we could be doing for looking at how are we really dismantling or changing systems as we do this work, because it is part of our legal mandate. And so reaching in and thinking about how to do that and how to set up a approach for that is something that I know that the counties are really interested in working with you all on. So really look forward to being engaged in those conversations as we're thinking about SMART goals together. Thank you so much.
No other people have raised their hand, so I think that's it for public comment.
Thank you so much. Jamie, do you want to go ahead and take the roll on the motion?
Yes. Oh, somebody just put their hand up.
Someone just raised their hand. So just in the nick of time. Scott, wait. Scott?
He's muted.
You're on mute, Scott. Not sure if you're. There you
Hello?
go. Yes, there you are.
Perfect, thank you. Just real quick, I'm Scott Waite. I am the Executive Director in Merced County. And the main thing I just wanted to bring up as I looked at it, both the audacious goal and the North Star statement don't include the word families in them at all. It says environments. So we're only looking at, or it feels like we're only looking at out in the environment.
Okay, all right, thank you, Scott. Okay, we are going to close out the public comment now, and Jamie will call the roll.
Molly Munger,
Yes.
Jackie Majors,
Yes.
Elsa Jimenez,
Aye.
Shana Hazen,
Aye.
Monica Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Dr. Burke Harris.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you all. Dr. Burke Harris, looking at the time, do you want to switch it up a bit and take a break now, or just checking if commissioners want to keep going?
I was thinking the same thing, that it might be nice. I'm reading faces here, so give me a signal. That it might be nice to take a break. What we'll do is, because we're a little bit behind on time, let's go ahead and have a 20-minute break, and have a 20-minute break, and we will reconvene at 12:22.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Are you in the closed session?
No, we still have our item. We're gonna go to item 5. Then
And then closed session. And then come back for 6 and 7.
Everyone to turn their cameras back on.
Bring Melissa over. Yes.
Yeah.
Please. We are bringing Melissa Stafford Jones on deck. That's it. She's all the way up there. And Sherry Tang. Is she still there? Yes. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Sherry.
Hi there.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Dr. Burke Harris, if you're ready, we'll continue with item 5, or not continue, but we'll start item 5.
Yeah, I was looking for Commissioner Perry, but I think we'll go ahead since we have a quorum. And so we'll dive into item 5, our race, equity, diversity, and inclusion reflection. And Camille, can you take us away?
Sure, absolutely. Simon, have you got the slides? Melissa has the slides? Simon does? Then we can move it forward.
Oh, I'm sorry, next one?
Yep, please. So again, it's funny, I put here in talking points, good morning, commissioners, but we moved through that. Now it's afternoon. So welcome back. Hope you had a good break. And I am so pleased today to present with the executive director of the First Five Association, Melissa Stafford Jones, and with Jackie, an overview of race, equity, diversity, and inclusion, also known as READY work, which is a reflection and learning effort across all partners in the First Five Network. So today we are going to focus on the work we are doing at the state level and plan to come back in October with a presentation from our county partners who are to understand how this work is being implemented at the local level. So this is kind of a two-part, and today we're starting at the state level. So really, for us, building on all of your direction to ensure, and as we've heard in our first item this morning, to ensure that equity is embedded in all we do. The READY work informs, teaches, and demonstrates our understanding of equity at an individual, organizational, and system level. Next slide, please, Simon. So excited about that. 2020 was a reckoning year with increased race and racial consciousness, and across the nation, conversations regarding equity, implicit bias, cultural sensitivity began taking place, and including in our First Five networks. So all parts of the network, the counties, the association, and here at First Five California, we all agreed the network needed, wanted most of all to engage, as you can see, in a comprehensive approach to doing this work, to learning more, and to figuring out how do we not only ensure equity is embedded in all of our work, but how do we ensure that everyone has the training and professional development that is needed. So So we agreed it was vital to do this work together. And in fact, not too long ago, Melissa and I got together and put together a joint statement that kind of cements or memorializes our commitment to partnering together, not only on the Ready work, but on all our work regarding children and families, as a commitment, as a demonstration that we really are committed to doing this work together. We also agreed that the approach would meet each person, each county where they are, and move things forward. That it needed to be multi-level. That it needed to be how we move forward needed to have a multitude of approaches and strategies going forward. And that's what we're going to talk with you about today. We are excited about the work that has been done, and more excited about the work to come. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to talk about, next slide, I think, about something we also talked about, which was targeted universalism. Melissa.
Thank you, Camille, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to be part of this discussion today. I really want to thank Camille for setting the stage for this discussion and for the partnership with First Five California and your leadership in advancing equity and specifically outcomes, as was discussed earlier, addressing really eliminating inequities, as the chair stated that we all need to be committed to for young children and their families. And as the last slide just showed, each of the parts of the First Five Network, First Five California, the association, and individual local First Fives are engaging in Ready work in terms of their own work of their organization at the level of individuals and development, thinking about the organization itself, and in our external work around policies and systems. And at the same time, we also wanted to come together and say, how do we do this work together? So I'm really appreciative of that partnership to do that. As Camille articulated and was discussed this morning, the why that underlies this Ready work that we're doing together really is rooted in the core mission of First Five, and that is that all children have the opportunity to thrive in school and life, but combined with what we know and what the data tells us, which is the stark reality that was discussed earlier today, that some children, especially Brown, Black, Indigenous, and low-income children, face much greater structural and systemic barriers to thriving. And by centering Ready, our work here is to identify those inequities, to see them in new ways with a greater structural understanding, and then to develop these systemic approaches that can change the conditions in which our children are born and grow. And this slide on targeted universalism embodies that approach, that we have shared goals for all our young children, while recognizing that different approaches are needed to ensure that policies and systems support the needs and strengths for different groups. It reminds us of how the different starting points, that barriers and privileges and power are different for different groups. And this slide really calls on us to differentiate between equality and equity, and highlights that that differentiation is essential to achieve justice. And, I think the commission and Chair Burke-Harris spoke to this morning, specifically in your discussion around developmental screenings, and that we have a goal that all children receive needed developmental screenings and the follow-up. But we know that the data consistently shows us there are certain groups that don't achieve those goals, and we need to have specific targeted strategies to change those outcomes. And I wanted to share a really explicit definition of targeted universalism, because I don't know that anybody can say it better than John A. Powell, the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley. So I wanted to just read briefly this definition that he and his colleagues used in a recent paper on targeted universalism. Targeted universalism means setting universal goals pursued by targeted processes to achieve those goals, based upon how different groups are situated within structures, culture, and across geographies to obtain the universal goal. It's an approach that supports the needs of particular groups while reminding everyone that we are part of the same social and civic fabric. The implementation strategies derived from a targeted universalism framework come in many forms. Some may be simple technical fixes or modest changes. Others may be more sweeping changes or deeper structural reforms. Targeted universalism is a platform that jettisons an overly formalistic one-size-fits-all policy formula in favor of an approach that is more outcome-oriented. And I think the discussion this morning around how do we really make sure that we keep our eye on the focus of where it needs to be, which is at the end of the day on changing outcomes for young children and families, and how is it that we take a systemic targeted approach to that, is embodied in this definition of targeted universalism. And as Camille mentioned, we're going to appreciate the opportunity to bring some of the more local work forward at the meeting in October, but I thought I would just share a few examples of how we're already seeing targeted universalism in action. I shared with the State Commission earlier this year about some of the work that local First Fives are doing to address Black maternal and infant health disparities, and particularly with Black infant mortality rates in California 3 times those for white infants. We know that this work is critical, and several local First Fives are working in partnership with parents, families, communities, partners, communities-based organizations to change the systems and the context and the conditions that underlie that unacceptable disparity. Some commissions are specifically focusing on asking themselves the questions, how do we make our systems more supportive and safer for oppressed and marginalized families? Another way of asking it is sort of, who do our systems currently serve? Why are they structured the way they are? And what of those power structures needs to change in order to achieve equity? Commissions are also disaggregating data by race, income, and geography so that their efforts can be focused on systems development and changing the conditions where there are the greatest inequities. And some commissions are really delving into their funding approaches with their local partners, looking at their practices and policies, looking at things that may sound mundane, like how an RFP is written or how a proposal is evaluated, but really taking that on to rethink how it is that we engage and build the voice and the influence and the power of community to make changes through our funded partnerships so that that support and those conditions and those power structures can start to change to address the greatest inequities. And in order to do more of that work, to deepen that work, to spread that work, and to genuinely and authentically center ready in all we do as First Fives, to build our capacity to do that work as organizations and individuals, but to really also be policy advocates and systems developers in a way that really is about changing those conditions and at the end of the day, outcomes for children and families. The First Five Network said to ourselves, we need to take on an intentional body of work together. And I do want to note the comments, really important comments made this morning about how we take training but not stop there, is that we are framing this work together. We've got a 2-year, which we know is not long enough, but it's a starting point, that we're calling, though, it's a 2-year learning and action initiative. Not only learning and training, but meant to be specifically grounded in how do we take action based on what we are learning and how we are working to be and do differently to advance equity. And so we're really fortunate as a network to have come together and selected a group of consultants to work with us on this work. Cherie Tang, Omawale Satterwhite, Catherine Atkin, and Melissa Mendoza Campos, to partner with us on this 2-year Ready initiative. And so I'm going to turn it over to Cherie Tang to tell you a little bit more about the initiative, about our consultant partners approach, and the work that we have embarked on together as a network. So Cherie.
Thank you, Melissa. And it's good to see old friends, new friends, colleagues. We right now are in the curricular design and pilot phase. We had a winter of getting ready, and then followed by conducting 40 interviews with internal First Five and external stakeholders. We prepared a report that you have seen, and now we have piloted our curriculum with the core team that has been really providing partnership and leadership and thought partnership to us. We are ready to launch the sessions, 6 learning experiences in the fall. The dates have been set and registration is happening. We want to include with the 6 learning experiences 4 statewide workshops where we're going to dig into different areas that folks have told us they really want to talk about. One is white supremacy and anti-racist culture and behaviors. Second is policies. Melissa mentioned a couple of them earlier. From the assessment, we also heard that we need to really meet the needs of the counties where they are, not where we want them to be, but where they are right now. We are not shying away from race in all of this work. It's very easy for some of the more counties that have lesser people of color demographics to say we need to talk about poverty. Yes, we do. And we need to not shy away from the centrality of race in the history of this country. So a little bit about our team. So Omo, Catherine, Mel, you may have met some of us, maybe not, but we come to this work from a long history of cultural humility to overcome dominant practices with a 7 generations approach. This work of equity, racial consciousness cannot be a one and done. And it's not a 2-year thing and then it's over. For many of us, race has been something that we were born into to have to struggle through our whole lives. For others of us, it's been a more recent awakening. So no matter where we are on this journey, the important thing is to get started. So we know that. Number 2 is the idea and the principle of co-design, that we are co-designing this with the leadership core team so that there's co-ownership. As a consultant who's been doing racial equity, racial justice work for my entire life, and as a consultant for 20 years, I know that we come and go. But what's important is building the capacity of the First Five ecosystem to take on this work with courage, with skills, and that we can shed some of the dominant practice that demand us to be perfect. We're not. And we will make mistakes, we will learn from those mistakes, and we will carry those lessons forward. From the assessment that we did with the listening, with the 40 stakeholders around the state, this is what we are seeing, right? In the headwinds and the tailwinds that you see in the report to you. I want to sum it up here quickly, which is all of the counties face complex and unique questions and have their particular circumstances and contexts, right? That's no surprise. There's a wide spectrum of what's considered ready, from translating materials to much deeper dives, some supported by external consultants, to rolling out programmatic work. There's a recognition that 2020 was a reckoning year with race and racial consciousness as a result of the police murder of George Floyd, right? Bringing this whole front and center into the national consciousness, where for decades past, it's been on the consciousness of a lot of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color. the folks we talked to from the first 5 institutions say that they are not where they need or want to be when it comes to ready. No matter how much work they've done, they recognize that this is an ongoing journey, that we may never get there and be able to check this off. I deeply resonated with that sentiment. And first 5 stakeholders recognize the leadership role that you are playing to center and elevate Ready. Your voice, your leadership matter greatly because it gives permission, cover, and pathways for others to act. Some of the changes that folks want to see, like earlier, you spoke a lot about outcomes, right? As an evaluation practitioner, that's just like singing to my heart. So some of the outcomes that folks want to see, number 1 is policies have to have Ready embedded. It cannot be colorblind. Number 2, staffing needs to continue to evolve that reflects their local communities' demographics. Third, more equitable funding distribution, making the process to access funding opportunities much more equitable in more languages, yes, and more capacity building, and without the stringent requirements that often leave marginalized communities out of it completely. For staff of color, they want to be respected, they want to be more seen and have more voice in the decision-making processes. And lastly, folks told us that they want to see commissioners be more reflective of who's being served in their counties. And in many places, this is not yet the case. To summarize, folks want more clarity, definition, and action steps. So I'm not gonna read the tailwinds and headwinds to you. I'm sure you've read it and can read it yourself. I just wanted to highlight some of the points here, right? The folks are ready to engage in this work. There's momentum. And we are challenged by folks who think that they can continue to do nothing and can continue to deny the importance of digging into this with their whole hearts. So I am coming to you to support your theme of outcomes. And I believe that the outcomes need to come with support, incentives, as well as consequences for even the best meaning people. That it cannot be something that they can just kind of go through the motions, so to speak, and nothing changes for the children and the families. So that's what I wanted to kind of cover this morning, this afternoon, and see if you have any questions for me that I can speak on.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I think there's a lot here, and I also want to be sensitive to our time in terms of all we have to accomplish on the agenda. So if we can take a commission discussion until I think we need to we're going to need to wrap this item by 12:55. So if we can go until 12.
Yeah.
So why don't we go until 12:52 and then leave 3 minutes for public comment, hopefully.
Sorry, I hadn't realized that we were unmuted. I just wanted to forward the slide and the discussion and questions for consideration. Thank you, Cherie, for your thoughtful presentation and outlining the work that we've done so far and the overview of the findings.
Yeah.
So as we sent the full report to you earlier this week, just to make sure that it was fresh. I'm sure you all had read it before, but thought it would be helpful to send it again earlier. And so a couple of questions that we worked with Melissa on is to kind of what are we thinking about when what were the thoughts that came up when the commissioner read the report? So within the assessment findings, did you find anything really striking? Did anything kind of stand out to you or important to, what were the highlights? Did you identify any linkages between our leadership, our role here as First Five California on equity to the report findings? And how can that, how does this inform our ongoing READY work? Right, we had a robust discussion this morning and this report. So what does that look like, right? As we govern, as we identify priorities. And lastly, what actually surprised you? What additional questions or wonderings were raised when you read the report? So, or the presentation from Cherie. Thoughts? Reflections? Okay, Elsa, thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Jimenez?
Just a thought. I really appreciate that, the local First Fives and the association and the statewide commission are really going to embrace moving towards being a more ready organization and system. And I really appreciate the fact that we're going to do it together. As was mentioned, I think by Cherie, we really need to co-design, what are the strategies that we are going to implement, and it has to happen across the continuum and really hopefully centered on the voice of the families and the children that we hope to help, improve their outcomes, improve their well-being, et cetera. So I really do look forward to future discussions on this topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Jimenez. Other reflections? I think we unpacked a lot this morning too. So I see this as an extension of the conversation earlier. So I know that the commission is very clear on the passion they have for equity. Chair Commissioner Majors, and then Commissioner Burkharris or Chair Burkharris.
Thank you, guys. Jackie, I agree. We talked quite a bit about a lot of these things this morning. So at risk of not, repeating ourselves, I'm sure we're just really eager and excited to hear what comes of this. Again, I'm really glad that we all have this on the table, that we're talking about it, and that we are ready to be really intentional about it. I do have one question, just one really simple question. From reading the READY findings for stakeholder interviews, can you just tell me from the 47, I think you had 47 stakeholders? Yes?
Yes.
Was there anything about demographics profile? Were they throughout California? Is there any specificity you can provide around them?
Cherie and or Melissa, I don't know if you have those stats at your fingertips.
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I can say they included both internal First Five leaders and staff and external partners from across all. We break up the state into 6 regions, so from across the entire state and at the state level. So First Five California also had staff, commissioners, and some partners who were interviewed as well. So it had local and state and across the entirety of the state.
Great. And I will just say again, not to repeat myself, but as we look at informants, when we're doing interviews, when we're doing surveys, when we're trying to collect data, the diversity of the people and the professionals and the I would say, whoever, parents, whoever, that diversity and the demographics is also, I think, really key in getting sort of rich data and information that's respective of all the folks that we're hoping benefit from this work. But thank you guys for this work.
Great, thank you. Chair Burke Harris.
In the interest of time, all I'll say is that I think that this provides us a good baseline data on how we're doing and gives us an opportunity to set some goals and some milestones and incorporate as we're moving forward. So thank you for doing this important work.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we can move forward. We had this next. Sorry. Where the next slide was going to talk about how we center equity and ready in our North Star work, but we had a full robust discussion on that. So we're going to skip forward to Melissa Stafford Jones and the work that they are doing. So Camille, did you want to just say 2 seconds or?
No, I honestly, I do think we've had a pretty thorough discussion this morning around all of this, and we'll continue that discussion. But as the association finalizes their strategic plan, I know Melissa wanted to share with us that work that they're doing and how Ready plays a part of that for all of us. So Melissa.
Yeah. Thanks, Camille. Thank you again, commissioners, for having me. I think I'm just really grateful in some ways that the stars aligned in terms of the North Star and audacious goal discussions of the State Commission over the last several months. The First Five Association and the 58 local commissions have undertaken at the same time over the last 6 months a strategic planning discussion, and really appreciate the partnership with First Five California, as Camille mentioned, as part of that effort, and seeing both the alignment we already had, but the potential to live out that alignment in our actions for deeper impact and changing outcomes became just so clear to us. That resulted in the joint statement that Camille mentioned. So just really appreciative of that partnership. We have been working on a new strategic plan. It's still in draft form. Want to be clear about that. So it still remains a bit of a work in progress, but we're getting close. And that it's really intended to represent the collective goals of local First Fives and focus on what we can do most impactfully by doing it together. Drawing on local expertise and experience, on research, on field learning, on best practices, work with partners and experts, our deep partnership with First Five California, and really identifying those policy and systems changes that are needed to improve health and wellness, developmental outcomes, early learning, and family resiliency, all in the context of using a whole child, whole family approach, centering equity, being prevention oriented, and really focus on systems work and systems integration. And I wanted to just share a few aspects of the draft strategic plan that focuses on the aspect of centering race, equity, diversity, and inclusion, so that it provides a foundation for the work we will be doing together ahead. And as I share that with you, I first want to just pause and acknowledge that I am sharing about this work around centering Ready in our strategic plan as a white person, as a white leader with white privilege, with economic privilege, and that it's with a lot of humility and a really deep commitment to learning and to both being and doing differently to advance equity, and to committing to using that privilege in a way that does not uphold existing power structures, but is really about utilizing it to dismantle those power structures and create new structures and systems that bring forward the fullness of the voices and influence and power that we need to change these outcomes. So I really just want to acknowledge that, and that is part of what I bring to the work, but it also means I have a lot more to continue seeing and being and doing differently. In terms of the First Five Association strategic plan, and this is specifically around the Ready work, there are other aspects of it too. We intentionally approached incorporating Ready in two ways. The strategic plan explicitly calls out Ready as its own priority because we want to be transparent and ultimately accountable for advancing equity, for changing outcomes. And at the same time, we do not want to see our Ready work as separate from other work we do. And so it is also intentionally embedded across every other priority in the strategic plan, which you can see listed here on this slide in terms of our policy and systems change work and goals, our capacity to advance Ready locally, and really thinking about the association's work itself and how Ready becomes embedded and centered in it. As I mentioned earlier, and as we talked about in this presentation and this morning, we specifically call for using a targeted universalism approach. A really critical area of the Ready work in our strategic plan is focusing on parent and family engagement, not only bringing their voice forward, but engagement for influence and shifting power. It's really a critical piece of living out the I in Ready and having the inclusion of that experience and expertise and part of the creation of new systems and the decisions we make around how services and systems and policies work that is centered on the experience and the voice and the power of parents and families and communities, and really bringing that holistic view to the work. It's also rooted in healing. As we talked about earlier this morning, it's rooted in resilience, healing, strengths of families and communities toward liberation so that all of our children, particularly those furthest from opportunity, may pursue joy and their full potential. And then lastly, the aspect of it is that we talked about earlier today, it is really oriented to the readiness of systems and to the policy frameworks that support those systems. We want to ask ourselves, are our systems ready to support children, families, and communities to thrive, rather than only asking, is a child, an individual child, ready for school? Are our policies, are our systems that are creating the context, are we helping create the conditions for children to be ready and to support families and communities in helping their children to be ready for school, to be healthy, and to be ready to grow into their full potential? And so that way of connecting our systems work and our Ready work is really at the heart here as we look to create frameworks and address the silos and the privilege and power structures that we have that hold in place inequities, and instead create change that changes those at a policy and systems and level. And then lastly, I just wanted to share a little story. I wanted to share the other day, we were having a meeting of our Ready core team, which really is an incredibly diverse, powerful team of people from across the First Five network, including First Five California, who are coming together to work with the consultants to really design this learning and action experience. And in that meeting, Cherie, who you heard from earlier, shared a quote from a book by Adrienne Marie Brown about how we hold space for this work. And I had actually been planning to go back into Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Emergent Strategy, to help me find a way in this presentation to really express what I've been seeing and hearing and feeling in the First Five Network's commitment to Ready, that the work is authentic, it's searching, it is challenging, it is full of learning and uncertainty, it's energizing. And that even though when maybe you look at it on a piece of paper and the plan, it looks small, you know, a training here, a meeting there, a conversation there. Cherie reminded me after that Adrienne Marie Brown talks about the power of fractals. And I want to just share in closing a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Emergent Strategy. She says, "When we speak of systemic change, we need to be fractal. Fractals, a way to speak of the patterns we see, move from the micro to the macro level. The same spirals on seashells can be found in the shape of galaxies. Small is good, small is all, the large is the reflection of the small. Eventually, transformative practices that begin small will demand new societal structures." And I think that is the work we are attempting and embarking and committing to do together. So thanks for allowing us to have this conversation today on our collective Ready work.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I know that you have been sent the slides, and this question is ever more top of mind for me after this, the conversation this morning. Right, our big question in this work is, what is our role in advancing not just actually racial equity, but racial justice? And I felt that a lot of those themes came out in the discussion this morning. Right, what I get a sense is a righting a wrong. And this is just the bigger question. We won't dive deep because I know that in the interest of time, we can move forward, but I'd love to leave the commission with this big question about our role as First Five California and how do we move towards racial justice as we are doing our equity work. With that said, you can go to the last slide about our next steps, and we don't necessarily need to read through them, but you have our commitment to continue to work with local commissions and the association on this cycle of inquiry, cycle of improvement, right? Knowing that this is a journey for all of us, right? Unpacking who we are, how we operate in this work and with one another. So I don't know if I'm going to hand it back over to you, Chair Brooke Harris, if there's further discussion, but really grateful for the discussion this morning and this presentation that also encapsulates our commitment to real racial equity and racial justice.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So, you know, I will take a moment. I want to defer to you, Camille, because I know we're fairly behind on the agenda. I'm trying to do my best to try and figure out how to make up some time. Well. But if there is, if you all want to prioritize more time for this conversation, we just have to figure out, because I know we have some important things to cover in closed session, as well as our financial update and our budget and legislative update. So if there's some, I defer to you in terms of how you want to manage the time.
So on one hand, we are holding over item 7 until October. The staff felt like we still have a bit more work to do on it. So to take that one off the agenda creates just a touch more time to do that.
I'm sorry, it actually doesn't create more time because on the schedule that I have, there was no time allocated to
for it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, here we go. So my plan not helping, but I think the other thing I would ask is if we plan to come back with, again, keeping you up to date and talking about the Ready work. So if there are important questions to ask right now, we can do that, but please know you will have opportunities in the future to not only understand the work that will be going on, but to have an opportunity to ask those questions. So I would say we don't have anybody who's raised their hand in public comment at this time, although you haven't asked for it, but we can go ahead and see if there's anything pressing from commissioners. And I would say if not, we close this item out and move to closed session. I think closed session will take longer than maybe the 30 minutes allowed. So I'm a bit worried about that.
So if I may, I'll be very, very, very brief. I appreciate Melissa opening up with, her position of privilege and recognizing that the work that lays ahead is very challenging. And I'm just really, really excited to see the association, First Five locals and the state commission to really lead with this work. It's very exciting, and it's really going to create the transformation that we need to see in our space, but hopefully then trickles to other systems, right? To school systems, to healthcare systems. And I get chills just being about the excitement of the work that lays ahead. And so I do look forward to our future October meeting and hopefully more time on the agenda to discuss this. So thank you.
Dr. Burke Harris, just wondering, looking at the agenda, the last item on the state and federal legislative update and budget. I know many folks, many of the commissioners have had updates on the great budget that was passed and all the good things that were there, but there's a lot written here. So if as a commission you wanted to table that item, we might be able to, if you're looking for time savers.
Great.
That might be
Thank
one.
you. Thank you, Camille. Yes, recognizing that there are actually two future items on the agenda that where I'm a little bit concerned about time, but I did want to make sure that we take a look at the agenda and figure out if there are additional comments that commissioners want to make on our ready agenda item now. Please let us know. Otherwise, let me know. Otherwise, I'll move forward to public comment. All right. Well, hearing none, I will. Is there any public comment?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and go over to closed session and consider an item in closed session, and then we will return in. I'm gonna give us until a minute to get over there, and we'll start there at 1:10, and so we can return to this forum at 1:40.
Commissioner Burke Harris, we need to read exactly going into closed session.
Yes.
Why we're doing it.
Yes, thank you. The commission will meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126E1 and 2 to confer with and receive advice from its legal counsel. Commissioners will now move to closed session for the matter of Rescue Agency Public Benefit LLC protestant versus First Five California awarding agency pending before Department of General Services, State of California, protest number 21-036. And
Thank you.
we've all received the Zoom link, so we'll leave this meeting and join the other Zoom meeting. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go. Does Sarah know?
Long time no see, everybody. You want to talk about the agenda?
Right, I just want to confirm.
Report out.
Oh, Marcia is going to, if it's all right, Dr. Burke Harris, report out on the closed session.
Please, thank you.
So the commission met with its attorneys to receive and received guidance in the matter of the bid protest before the Department of General Services filed by Rescue. And we received its guidance and direction with respect to that litigation.
So looking at the agenda, we spoke before we went into closed session about possibly withdrawing or putting the state and federal update. Just want to make sure if you want to table that item or if you want to keep it on the agenda.
Well, I think we have the financial update, which is scheduled for 40 minutes. And so that would take us to 2:30 and give us time for the state and federal budget and legislative update. So I think if we are good at sticking to time, we can adjourn at 3.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I think Marcia Thomas has joined us. So whenever you're ready for the financial update, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. And I have slides too. There we go. Perfect. Good afternoon, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I have a few financial updates to share with you. The last time that we met, we talked about February's Prop 10 revenue coming in lower than anticipated, with 7.5 million available to transfer from the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration to the California Children and Families Trust Fund. There were a couple potential factors that impacted the low revenue amount. The first factor being February was a short month. Final payment of the cigarette tax stamps purchased by credit and the cigarette and tobacco tax returns are due from distributors to CDTFA by the 25th of each month. For February, the last business day of the month was Friday, which was the 26th. So that didn't allow CDTFA sufficient time to record, process, and remit the funds to the state controller's office in order to be captured as part of February revenues. As a result, revenues were not captured in February, so they were added to the March revenues. Second factor was the assumption that distributors purchased a larger amount of cigarette tax stamps in December and January, reducing the need to purchase additional stamps in February. In looking at past data, higher purchases in December and January is not unusual. As we look at the 3-year revenue graph, we see fluctuations across the months. This can be attributed to various factors such as low cigarette tax stamp purchases, statewide assessments being hit against the fund, as well as administrative costs. Backfill, when backfill gets deducted. So as a result, there's not really a consistent trend across the fiscal years. Since our last commission meeting, we've received March, April, and May Prop 10 revenue from CDTFA, and the average transfer amount for those months was about 29 million, with an average of 5.9 million being allocated to the state commission each month. In March, we did see an increase in the cigarette tax stamp, which was 28 million in March versus 7.9 in February, and an increase in tobacco products, which was 5.1 million versus 705,000 in February. February appears to be an isolated occurrence. However, in collaboration with the CDTFA and the First Five Association, we continue to have quarterly meetings to review and to monitor the revenue patterns of the Proposition 10 transfers. Was there any questions on the slide or anything that I've said so far? No? Okay, I'll continue on. So the next slide is at the end of May, we received from the Department of Finance the revised 5-year projections for Proposition 10 revenue. This year was a little different than years past because we received 2 distinct revenue projections. The first one was our standard Proposition 10 projection, which was in alignment with years past, showing an average decline in revenue of approximately 2.5%. The second projection captured the potential impact to revenue with the passage of SB 793. SB 793, authored by Senator Jerry Hill, prohibits retailers from selling or possessing with the intent to sell menthol and mint-flavored cigarettes and most flavored tobacco products. On August 28, 2020, Governor Newsom signed SB 793, and in January 2021, a referendum placed SB 793 on hold and qualified it for the general election in November of 2022. Department of Finance is projecting that if SB 793 is upheld, there would be a significant impact to our revenues as shown on the graph. This would not only, this would occur in 22-23 with a partial year impact beginning November 16, 2022, and then a full year impact beginning July 1st of fiscal year 23-24. The 2 projections provided by the Department of Finance vary considerably. We've reached out to get more information on the assumptions that factor into the projections, particularly with the flavor ban impact. What the Department of Finance has shared is their projection relies on estimating consumer response to cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and then tobacco products should the flavor ban be implemented. For instance, as an example, cigarettes would be, if the flavor ban is upheld, projections assume 30% of sales are flavors, and about half of consumers would either switch to contraband or quit. These assumptions help to explain the downward trend we're seeing on the slide. In partnership with the First Five Association, we're working towards gaining a better understanding of the projections provided by the Department of Finance. For example, last week, we were part of a call with the First Five Association to discuss Prop 10 revenue projections with the counties. We also invited Department of Finance to join in on the call, where we engaged them in conversations surrounding the variance in the projections and the assumptions that went into them, particularly with the flavor ban impact. They were able to answer questions and help explain a little bit of their assumptions. Also letting us know, which we know, how volatile and unpredictable it can be, so it can change. In addition, we are looking to contract with an economist to do a deeper analysis into the assumptions and the methodology surrounding Proposition 10 revenues. This will allow us to not only enhance our understanding, but allow us to be more informed on preparing our own projections. The next slide. This slide is our revenue projections for fiscal year 21-22. It shows the amount available to transfer once assessments, administrative costs, and the Proposition 99 backfills deducted, with $79 million being estimated to go to the State Commission. The last slide. The next slide. There we go. The last slide is a picture of all of our funds. This slide's pulling the data from the financial plan and the fund condition summary, which are included in the materials for this item. We continue to work close. We are continuing to work close to close fiscal year 2021, I apologize, with the Department of General Services. We anticipate that to be completed by the end of August. We look forward to coming to you in October with updated fund balances, which will help inform the Commission on funding decisions to implement the North Star. So that is all I have for today, and would be happy to answer any questions you guys may have for me.
Marcia, just on this last slide, as the you know, looking at it, this demonstrates if no other decisions were made. So between now and it assumes that between now and 24-25, the commission wouldn't be authorizing funding. So this is what it is right now without any future funding taken into account. Just so, I just want to make sure.
Yes.
So you can see where, so for instance, when the funding for impact ends, you know, we gain more revenue because not sure on or home visiting or any of the other investments. So.
Correct.
Thank you.
I did, not raise my hand. I had a question, but I see that Commissioner Jimenez has raised her hand. So why don't you go ahead, Commissioner Jimenez?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment that I see opportunity when we look at that net after reserve, knowing that this is really just based on status quo, but it really creates an opportunity, especially as we move forward with our strategic planning process, embracing the ready work. I see opportunities to be able to take some of those nets after the reserve and really help invest in the work that lays ahead.
I'll just go ahead and jump in.
Sorry, Chairman
Yes.
Harris.
So I'm in terms of the fiscal plan. And you all will have to forgive me because this is still where my being new to the commission comes in. So I understand that that our work is funded with these tax dollars, but our mission is also in part to eliminate smoking, right? So this is a very good thing, but what immediately comes to mind is, and it could be just my lack of familiarity with past work, but is there, when you're talking about the financial plan, is there a financial plan that looks ahead to say, if we are successful in driving towards our goal of eliminating smoking, what is kind of, how do we think about going through that process of reduced revenue, and how do we prioritize through that process? What do we, what is our strategy in that? Because ideally, right, we want this to happen, right? I mean, ideally, we want as few people smoking in California as possible, and knowing that that is our goal, what has been our process of preparation financially for, the eventuality of our success?
I think we have discussed, there is no written plan in place, certainly working on that, but thinking about moving forward, looking at if things continue to reduce with the percentages that they are, what does that allow us to do in the future, and how long can we stretch out using one-time funding or the reserves to continue to fund the work of First Five. And additionally, as always, looking at what are other possible revenue sources that might enhance our bottom line going forward. I don't know, Chris, can you talk, for when First Five actually came on board, was Rob's intention for it to last forever, or was it like, no, this is what, we were really, what he was really after?
Yeah, that was immediately where my mind went. So thank you for asking that. It's true that the authors of Proposition 10, this would have been in 1997 when they first drafted the legislation. It went to the ballot in 98 and passed by a majority vote of California voters. He and James Harrison, who was the attorney that helped draft that, actually used this funding source for this purpose. That it would not only reduce smoking, but it would give a protected funding stream to children birth to 5. And they knew not only would it have annual decline, but that eventually it would reach a low enough number that you would be grappling with some of these sort of sustainability questions that we're grappling with and have been for a long time. I've heard counties coming to the commission now, not only since I've come back as a ex officio, but when I was on staff, worried about the decline. It's really been, since it was built into the model, it's been a worry since the beginning, that when you aggregate 2% decline every year over 22 years, you see what you're seeing on this page. And so you raise an important point, Chair, and it almost becomes kind of an existential question, right? So what is the point? What can be done with that yellow bar, as well as the additional annual revenue, which may go down precipitously or may not, we'll see. It raises for me another question about that yellow bar, which is, how is it invested? And we do think about sustainability. If this were a family foundation and we were on the board, we would have, I bet, we would be hearing probably a very in-depth report on how our almost $400 million was being invested, and what was the return, and how were we using some percent every year for program investment or systems change. So, you know, I go to not only what the original intent was, but now there's some unexpected, you know, with unexpected opportunities, such as this fund balance presents itself as an opportunity, as a bit of an endowment, but maybe that, and that too is a strategic decision. Should it be an endowment, or should it be spent down quickly? Our friends in the counties, right, are also very expert at how to manage through change like this.
Commissioner Hassan, you had your hand up for.
I did. I think Commissioner Perry got at everything I was going to say. But yeah, was just going to mention that, you know, from a policy perspective, and the time that I've been on the legislative committee on and off, that, you know, the question is always, where can we find new revenue? And I think, you know, there's more work that needs to be done on that front. And also, as Commissioner Perry mentioned, my head is always, how do we invest this? Is there an opportunity to make this money work better for us, last longer for us? And I would go further than, you know, just a family foundation, but any large organization, that's what they're doing. And so I do think, not for today, but future work for us to really think about a strategy around sustainable funding and what that looks like, and to approach it to approach it with the seriousness we've done sort of all the rest of our strategic planning.
Can I also offer, it is actually a unique opportunity, just building off this morning, is that, you know, if we agree that we are going to influence systems, maybe it's not our money. Maybe it is not taking it into our pockets to say, how do we influence larger systems in their internal investments? And as we look at this, look at it as short-term foundation-like investments to spark major reforms, or as Commissioner Fitzgerald said, how do you blow it up with what we have, right? Like, what are the instigators? So it is a great thing that people are smoking less, and it's and that's not what we're trying. We're not trying to create more smokers per se, right? Like, that's a great thing, but also in this moment, as we are thinking about our North Star work about, and we're going to come back to you about system change. What does that mean for the money on the table, right? We don't, you know, get shifting from the mindset of we run program to what is our investment and what are we changing, right? How does this move the equity needle forward? And how does it create a large scale conversation that will transform the lives of children and families and communities? Commissioner Majors?
Thank you. I agree. It would be really great to see at some point, you know, where we're going. And I know I've asked this question before, were we supposed to be here forever? Was it supposed to be, an entity that made significant change for a period of time? Or were we supposed to be in the revenue generating business of trying to stay around for a very long time? Either way, I think, a deeper dive into that. But I also would say, since I've been on, we've talked a lot about how do we really look and design our impact and our investments as catalysts, as opposed to we're going to live it out forever. And that's been a really interesting shift I've watched since I've been on, in us establishing framework, expectation, vision, North Stars, and planting seed money and pilot money, but only with a plan for where it would go after. So I would say with all that, I think we have been thinking about how do we look at our investments as a catalyst for greater systemic long-term change.
All right. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
If I may.
Sure.
When is the last time that this body really did some strategic financial planning for the future, right? Knowing that the revenues are declining, that the work needs to shift in terms of what our role is, what we choose to fund, obviously within the statute. does this body do that every year, every 3 years?
Yes, just before they. Right, we did have a budget retreat actually just before a few of you came on to the commission. We did have that. I won't say it happens annually, but certainly looking forward, you know, it is something that we could do again, so.
So my question, I had the exact same question as Commissioner Jimenez. So thank you so much for asking that question. And I just wanted to probe a little further, Camille, in terms of the budget retreat that occurs. What type of strategic financial planning occurs in the budget retreat? Is it we're looking ahead at the next year, 2 years, 3 years, or are there any exercises to really ask some of these questions around, okay, so what, you know, contingency planning, or what happens when we achieve our goals and people are not smoking, as hopefully not at all, right? And those revenue streams, you know, hit certain threshold levels.
I would say they were more in the immediate, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So the planning that you're talking about is we would need to or, you know, put together something to have those conversations.
The thing about it that feels, I don't know if it feels academic, but I do feel like it goes to the seriousness of our intent, in terms of if we set a goal to reduce or eliminate smoking in California, it feels like it's really important for us to walk ahead and say, if we're not successful, or if we're not making big strides, we're doing something wrong, right? So we need to be reevaluating our work. And so really thinking about if we are holding ourselves accountable to success, then what does that mean, you know?
We certainly would, you know, want to think that we could talk with, you know, you, Chair, and figure out how we could put something together for the commission to embark on these conversations in the future. Not in the future, but soon, you know, but how to do that. Would love to do that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So sorry, my only other question is, so what are the next steps in terms of this budget projection? So we have these two options, or these two potential projections, and then yeah, what are the next steps organizationally in terms of preparing the organization for one versus the other of these outcomes?
Right. Again, we are in the process of contracting with an economist to come in and help us not only understand the projections, but to look at, you know, what that means for us, to help us in that thinking. Certainly your suggestion about putting together a budget workshop conversation with commissioners about moving forward. Immediately, how we're looking at that, I would say the immediate steps are: 1, closing the books, finding out what are with Department of General Services, finding out where our balances are right now, keeping a close eye on the referendum, you know, but doing planning for worst case scenario, and what that would entail. Marcia, is there anything else I'm missing from what the work you're doing?
No, I think you captured everything. Yeah.
I want to also add on that this isn't mutually exclusive from the North Star work or the SMART goal development, by the way, for us. Those have to be hand in hand, right? These are just the dollars for which we can reach our audacious goals. So my hope, and I'm happy to work with you, Chair Burke-Harris and Camille, about when you talk about a budget workshop, it's actually more than, it's a fiscal planning, if you will. What are the core, what are our core operations needs, and what is actually the money that we do have to invest in that North Star and audacious goal? So I'm hoping when we come back, whether that be in January in person, which is probably a good kind of roll up your sleeves type of activity to do. You have your short-term kind of expenditures, which you see here, but also thinking about 5, 10, 15, 20, right? In my mind, a generation is 20 years. And so we'll see where the money is, but we know that it's declining revenue 2%. So we actually have a general idea of what this might look like over time. So let's just be intentional about it, and let's just name it, and let's just kind of flag things, if you will, and the milestones that we want to reach with those dollars. So
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't have a picture, so I don't know. I mean, I can see you, but I don't think you can see me. Anyway, go figure. Just a little bit of context. I think the strategy has been, whether it's been stated or unstated, is to build up these huge reserves. That's really, the yellow bar is really the strategy. We have built those reserves up because we knew that the revenue was declining, and therefore we didn't spend the money that we were bringing in every year. Instead, we just kept piling it up and unspending it every year so that we would have a cushion, so that when, as we faced declining revenue, we would have, this is our kind of rainy day fund there. And that was something that really predates my time on the commission. And the chart that you're looking at that has the bar that shows the reserves is something that Shana and I on the Fiscal Advisory Committee, put together, or, worked with the staff and with Glenn Grissner's group, not Glenn Grissner, Glenn Price, Aaron Price, sorry, yes. To develop this so that we could at least see it. This is our way of helping the commission at least visualize what is happening with its money. And of course, this does put us in a good position to now discuss it. This is really, the question is, do we want to continue to just like a child trying to save a candy bar, just nibble at our money and continue to pile up reserves because we're afraid? Or do we do something bolder? One theory would have been that we would turn our attention more to systems change and do more advocacy and grow our political alliances, because we were going to run out of money that we would use for direct services and trainings and staff development and building spaces and programs and things like that. And I think that was the second prong of our strategy, because in the time that I've been following First Five has done much more in the area of advocacy and systems change than it did at its inception. Even though Rob was a big systems change guy, so he always wanted a lot of that. But I would say that both LA and First Five California put more oomph on making political alliances and changing systems. So we've had the two strategies. We've tried to put more money in impactful catalytic work by working with the legislature and other political forces, and we've tried to save up our money and not spend it. Whether we've been right in those strategies, whether the mix has been right, whether we've been effective, who knows? I just didn't want the new chair and any new member of the commission to think that it was not a strategy of sorts. It's an effort has been made. We have, and I wasn't here for all of it, but the commission as a whole, the many members changing over time, has tried to grapple with this in its way, and this is what it's been doing.
Thank you, Molly, for that context. That's very, very helpful.
I think it's wonderful to grapple with it more, firmly now. I think it's a great thing to do. We're ready as we're going to a next stage in so many other areas. We're ready for a next stage on our fiscal planning as well. I think I'm very excited about that.
Chair Burke Harris, we do have one public comment if you're ready to call for that.
Yes, I think we are. I'm looking at commissioners to see if there are any additional comments. No, I think we're ready to call for public comment. Thank you.
Melissa Stafford Jones. Melissa?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you again for having me. I just want to express appreciation for this discussion and the thoughtfulness of it. And I want to lead with the deep, deep commitment of the association and local First Fives around reducing tobacco consumption. I know I've shared with the group that I am a public health person by training, and this is a deep value of the association and the local First Fives. And so I appreciate the recognition of that commitment and intention that we share across the First Five network. I also want to link the conversations we had this morning around the North Star, what I shared about the First Five Association strategic plan and our READY conversation, because I also think when we think about sustainability, we also think about it as sustainability and scale, because as we build on the conversation we had this morning about achieving equity and improving outcomes for young children and their families, we know that part of that systems work is we actually have a lot of demonstrated systems that we have collectively built over many years that are effective, but that we know are not reaching all of the children and families that would need and want to engage with those systems and participate in them. So the one that comes to mind, just building on the discussion this morning we had about the CHIS study and looking at developmental screenings, is we know that at the local level, many local First Fives working with their community partners have really built systems around developmental screenings and follow-up, often in the context of the Help Me Grow program, but it can take other forms as well. But we also know it, even though we have built those and they are very effective for the children and families that engage with them, we also know we are not reaching all of the children and families that would benefit from engagement with those programs and systems. And that part of that is that they are not as fully connected across sectors, whether that's health, early learning, other family supports, that they could be. And that part of our work is how to take the local innovation that we have seen be effective and think about how do we really achieve state level, statewide systems change in that targeted universalism framework. And so for me, that is partly about achieving the outcomes, but that is also very much related to our sustainability conversation, because it's not just about sustaining sort of our work, it's about achieving the outcomes we want for all children and how do we sustain state level systems that support that. And what we know is that First Fives have been architects, designers, instigators, innovators for building those approaches that then can be lifted up potentially and thought about in a statewide context cross sector. So I really just want to appreciate the conversation around sustainability, that we are very committed to continuing to engage in it, that I think a multi-pronged approach to sustainability is needed. There's probably not just one answer to this conversation. It's a complex set of factors, both in terms of financing, but also the systems work we want to do together and our work around equity, and thinking about the path we want to take to achieve our goals and what resources and approaches we need to do that. And I think that's how we will find our path to finding the resources and the avenues to support us collectively really achieving those goals for children and families. So I really look forward to the ongoing conversation and the partnership around this work.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Camille, are there any other public comments?
Yes, Scott Waite.
Thank you. I'm Scott Waite. I am with the First Five Merced Commission. And I did just have a couple of comments. When we talked to, or I believe Commissioner Munger brought up the idea of an endowment or building it up. And I think as counties, we faced a big reckoning with that with Proposition 1D, if you recall. We did, the governor did propose taking large amounts of reserve accounts from counties. And so that was a big challenge for us. And it really started a conversation. I've worked with 2 First Five commissions now about the purpose of collecting taxes, if they are meant to be collected and serve children, or if they're meant to be put into an endowment to be used later. If we choose to go the route of saving for an endowment, we are basically skipping a generation of children that could benefit from investment now. And so I think that's a serious philosophical decision that your commission needs to make, the same as our local commissions deal with. And then kind of the last thing I would say is, I think it's an inevitability that eventually tobacco revenue will drop to the point where it's not viable any longer. I think that's a sign of victory over tobacco. I personally lost my dad in my early 20s from lung cancer. And so if everybody stops smoking, I think our job in between now and then is to message how important early childhood is and find other ways to fund it, because we know this isn't the permanent solution. So there's a few ideas just to grapple with, and I understand it's a big concept, and I don't think any of our local commissions have entirely figured it out either. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott.
That's it for public comment.
Okay. So we will move forward to our final item on the agenda. Item 8, our state and federal budget and legislative update.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So item 8 contains the updates. It's been attached and has a run through of both the state and federal details. I won't get too much into those because I know I think there's a meatier discussion to be had around not just what's transpired in the budget, but also what does that mean for First Five California. But I will tee it up by saying that overall, the final budget, the state budget in particular being the largest item of this update, makes significant investments in children and families and capitalize on a once in a lifetime, really once in a generation surplus to make a transformative change in our family serving services. I'm sorry, I guess I'm having camera issues. I just got a message from our team here. I will proceed and see if we can fix it, but I want to make sure we get into the discussion really of the matter. So touching back on the budget, the finalized budget agreement comes after weeks of intense negotiation between legislative leadership, budget committee chairs, and the governor and his administration. Reimbursement rate increases for childcare providers emerged actually as one of the most significant points of negotiation between lawmakers and the governor, which was an important part of the process, and we're glad that we got some wins and became part of the passage of trailer bills that include more of the detail on the appropriation. In our learning priority area, we saw major wins, many of which were years and I'll say decades in the making, most notably these childcare rate increases and rate reform. And in the hopes of restoring and supporting the early care and education workforce and mixed delivery system, the final budget contains a number of changes to provider reimbursement rates, including annualizing an increase in provider reimbursement rates to 75% of the 2018 regional market rate survey, and then allocating one-time federal money to bring all providers to 85% of that market rate survey for the next 2 years. The budget, as part of that agreement, also ratifies childcare Providers United contracts, which includes, among other things, rate increases, provider stipends and supplemental payments, pandemic flexibilities, and mental health supports. The final budget also provides a framework for rate reform policy for all childcare programs, which will seek to create set rate targets for a single rate system beginning in 2023. So additionally, the budget establishes a rate reform work group will be convened by Department of Social Services to develop recommendations on this rate methodology and existing program standards, including licensing standards, quality and environmental standards, and workforce competencies. The work group recommendations are due to the legislature and the administration no later than August of 2022, and will inform the Joint Labor Management Committee's recommendation on what that single reimbursement rate system will look like. So as you may recall, rate reform has been something that First Five California has championed for the last few years via previous sponsor bills. This year's sponsor bill, Senate Bill 246 by Senator Leyva, being our current vehicle. Given the rate reform wins in the budget, the author and the sponsor will not see the need to continue to move that bill forward. So SB 246 will be held in its second house, but we are grateful for Senator Leyva's push and introduction of it, and became a part of the work that helped reach these goals and these wins. Other learning wins, early learning wins include additional childcare slots, 120,000 new childcare slots in 2021-22, and that will increase to 200,000 new slots by 2024-25. There will be a provision of one-time funds for early childhood mental health consultation to support childcare providers in addressing children's social emotional development, using trauma-informed practices, and promoting health and well-being for children and families impacted by the pandemic. And on the health front, I outlined some of these already, but there'll be a 5-year extension of Medi-Cal eligibility for postpartum individuals to 12 months after birth, the addition of doula services as a covered Medi-Cal benefit. We're very excited about the creation of a children and youth behavioral health initiative to reimagine mental and behavioral health supports for individuals ages 0 through 25. Of course, continuing the support for work across systems to address adverse childhood experiences is also a big part of this budget and pertinent to the work ahead for us. And finally, in the area of resilient families and communities, we saw an extension of the current wage replacement rate for paid family leave until the end of 2022. It's been an issue area we've been pushing for and been supportive over the last years. And even in addition of a total funding of $12 billion in golden stimulus payments that will reach 2/3 of Californians. So I've covered a lot, but I will sum up, I think, in three key points that I see an intersection between or a role for First Five California, for the commission, for your leadership, your input, sort of guidance as we look to engage this monumental budget and investment by the state on these very, very key issues. And I think these are really the issues of rate reform, the issue of universal TK, and the mental health investments. And so on the first one, the rate reform side, as I mentioned, the Department of Social Services is going to be convening a working group to make recommendations on rate methodology and existing program standards, including the licensing standards, the environmental standards, and the workforce competencies. So given our role as convener of the original rate reform work group, as well as our Quality Counts California work and leadership, we do see a role for us in this space as we work to achieve a single rate system. And I think that's one area that I would love to get Commissioner any feedback or input. It's an area that we see and envision an important role for First Five California. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions on that one specifically, but I know that has been a meaty subject and certainly one that will involve a lot of stakeholders, given that we're transitioning both from a big win this year in terms of increasing rates, but also envisioning a different system down the road and what role we could play in shaping that. And on the universal TK front, as I mentioned, there we're looking toward a universal transitional kindergarten model in California. And we as an agency will be interested in playing a role in examining and studying that transition, as well as the key mixed delivery components of our system in this work. So we're talking about growth and bridging that growth as we're talking about scaling this UTK model. What does that mean for what I maybe would universal mixed delivery to ensure that the needs of families are being met across the system of all types of families. And as you may recall, First Five co-funded a study of the original implementation of TK in California. So this would be natural fit, a familiar space for us to be in, especially kind of as we're talking about new rollout and the stakeholders involved. And then the third point, the mental health investments, with the numerous mental and behavioral health investments in the budget, the focus on children's mental health coming out of the pandemic, the leadership of our chair, of course, we see clear intersections with our policy agenda and scope, especially now as we're talking about a North Star discussion, an audacious goal, right? And including, ensuring that the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative reaches children in all settings, I think is one clear example of one area where we could play a significant role. And we have commissioners who are steeped in this work, so we'd appreciate any guidance on how to best engage, collaborate, and support both on that mental health investment point and really across all these three areas, which are really monumental for children and families throughout the state. So I'll stop there and open up for any questions on any bits of the item, any feedback on these topics, and even certainly recommendations on how to best engage some of these issues moving forward.
I don't see, I don't see anybody's hand raised or box lighting up for,
I'm wondering if everyone's just being polite and nobody wants to go first.
Either that or people are going, this is the last item and okay, when we're done, we're done. I'm not quite sure either.
Commissioner Makers.
There we go, yeah.
Thanks for all of this. I'm one of those who it's the end of the day and I don't want to be the one that keeps us between this and closing out. I think these are all important issues. I would be remiss if I did not bring up just the point of universal TK and all the implications that it has, not most importantly to children and children being served with all their needs, children and families, but also the impact to TK, to the local childcare provider community, family childcare, what that looks like, how we ensure an equitable mixed delivery system that not only is going to serve children and families with their own specific desires and parental rights for what they want for their children, but again, also for the local, all the local in California, childcare providers, family childcare providers who have been educating, nurturing, and supporting California's children by the tune of almost 60% for years and years and years. So that mixed delivery system and the details in that will be really important to me and many as that rolls out. But thank you for the information.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think I saw another hand pop up.
Yes, thank you. I was being polite. I feel like I've talked a lot today, so I was trying to give other commissioners the floor. I really appreciate the presentation and overview, Max. I do think that this is a great budget in terms of advancing the commission's goals, but really helping to advance public health overall. And I look forward to future investments in these spaces. I just wanted to stress a point that you made about, being active and inserting ourselves in conversations around the development of strategies, RFPs, how funding is going to be allocated across the various spaces, but particularly in the mental and physical health sections. I do think that First Five needs to have an active voice and discussion with the state regarding how those dollars are going to be distributed at the local level and for what strategies.
Great points.
I will jump in and say, yes, I think that conversation with state partners and our state colleagues about how we, how all of this moves forward and how things are going to be allocated, I think is very important. I really wanted to add, and you all can tell me if this is crazy, but one of the things that I was very curious about as I was reading through all of these bills, and I know we talked in our last meeting about level 1, level 2, level 3. What does that mean in terms of the investment that First Five makes in advancing some of these bills? But the way that my mind is curious to evaluate some of this work is in terms of impact. And what is tricky, what I don't know if it's possible or not, or if it's a total pipe dream or not, but one of the things that I find myself really curious about in reading these bills is wondering when we go back to some of the strategic planning work that we're doing, when we go back to looking at some of the assessments of how we're doing against our goals and our targets, whether it's looking at the CHIS survey or looking at the READY data or any of that stuff, one of the pieces that I'm really curious about is which of these bills have the greatest impact in driving us towards the outcomes that we're trying to get to, right? And I'm sure that that is implicit in the analysis that gets it to be level 1, level 2, or level 3. But one of the questions that I ask in my mind is, it's a little bit going back to the metric that we looked at previously with like, if, then, right? So, if we have higher early childhood education reimbursement rates, then blah, and then how does that drive us towards our strategic goals as an organization? Or for example, if, paid family leave, or if, private insurers are obligated to cover ACE screening, then what outcome does that lead to? And particularly looking at it at the population level to help us really think about, that's the way I think about kind of prioritizing some of our advocacy efforts is looking at, which of these are absolutely critical to either enabling functions to get us to a big milestone that we're trying to drive to, or mission critical or maybe they're the milestone itself, right? Maybe that's the thing that we're trying to achieve, but just figuring out where that all fits.
Madam Chair, those are great points. In fact, the discussion you all have been undertaking around the audacious goal planning, the strategic, really that visioning that's taking place, and the SMART goals to follow are going to also shape the work we do in the Legislative Advisory Committee space, for example. Because as a body, we've adopted a policy agenda, and then we have through that advisory group, and then that ultimately shapes how we prioritize or which bills we may prioritize. So I think we're at this inflection point where we can drive forward towards this audacious goal that we're shaping out with specific policy platform to follow it, right? So it can be the horse before the cart, pulling it along. And I think it will give us room to grow in a lot of new spaces. In fact, that's an exciting part from an issue area standpoint. I think we've grown a lot of our expertise over the years on the childcare front, the ECE front, which I think is an important area to sustain and continue nurturing. But now we're talking about some paradigm shifts for the state, whether that's universal TK, significant mental health investments specific to children as well, right? And so these are the areas where I think there's a lot of room for growth for us as an agency and for us with this, audacious goal and planning to then have a policy platform that follows suit and make us more of a player on new bills and things that will drive directly towards that same goal.
Yeah, the last thing I would add is just I also think about, for example, are there sequencing issues, right? Like, for example, do certain things need to come first to provide a foundation for the next thing? And does that, so how are we prioritizing our time, given we have limited time, money, bandwidth, human capital? how are we prioritizing our time in terms of sequencing to drive to impact? So that helps to, at least me, have a much clearer vision of how the work that we are doing in this portfolio ladders up to where we are trying to drive to in a larger overall organizational strategy.
Commissioner Perry?
Just to build on that a little bit further, I'm thinking back to the beginning of the meeting and our upcoming calendar and the fact that we're only meeting 4 times in this fiscal year. And as Mr. Vargas just said, and we've been commenting on, this is a historic year in terms of what the state is able to was able to provide to its residents. I mean, in year over year, historic increase. And it's also historically challenging. And I am concerned that if we only meet 4 times in a fiscal year like this year, which is both an implementation year, but also another year to plan for the budget ahead, that we might not really have the opportunity to build on the momentum we created today, to have the in-depth conversation about finances, about the READY report, about future programming decisions, et cetera. I mean, there were many areas where we couldn't do the deep dive we would have liked to have done because these meetings, they can only be so long. But I know with the committee structure and the commission meetings, sometimes I feel it's almost hard to have a lens into everything that's going on and be as active as I want to be. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as like, is this the right meeting schedule for everyone? I know for staff, it's a heavy lift every single time. So please, I know your heart probably starts racing if I suggest more meetings, but at the same time, I think it would be hard to keep pace with the drills that are going on within departments and agencies right now to prepare to implement the many initiatives that were just described, much less. I am a little concerned at the pace we're going, while the pace outside of the organization is going at a very, very rapid clip. And wondered if we could just think about our pace here for a second.
It's a great point. I do think as a function of process, I do know that we were able to meet through at the committee level, right? It's one vehicle. But I appreciate the point around the broader team and bigger direction, given everything that's afoot. I don't know, Camille, if I know we've already had the item around the scheduled meetings. I'm always excited for these meetings, so if we were to meet more,
certainly we have the ability to schedule additional meetings, keeping within the 10 days on all of those for agendas. And so I would wonder, Dr. Burke-Harris, if this is something maybe the executive committee wants to, or to get input obviously from commissioners now, but then to go back and think about if additional meetings could already, be put on this schedule. We would, we know for sure we have 4. And but that doesn't preclude us from scheduling additional meetings. So serving at the pleasure of the commission, would want to hear what you're thinking.
I'd love to hear from commissioners. I see Commissioner Hazen has.
Yeah, no, it's something actually I've been thinking about for a long time, because I think it's both about sort of the number of hours we have together, but also sort of the gap in between the times we meet. And I'm just going to put it out there, I think our productive hours together, right? And I think we would all agree that our brain power productivity is not as great in the late afternoon, right, as it is in the morning. And so what if, I think it's not necessarily more hours, but potentially more shorter meetings where we could actually get more done. Or maybe it's adding, maybe it's more and they're I don't know, 3 hours or 4, like, but I think it's just being more creative and really think about how do we use our time, our brain power better.
So if I could stop for just a minute, because our legal counsel just kind of kicked me under the table as saying, we've already discussed the dates and the items. Maybe the best way to move forward on this would be for the executive committee to have a conversation. And not that we want to stifle any of you, but just adhering to the way public meetings go. Marcia, am I right?
Yes.
Yes. She said
Yeah,
so.
you know, I would, the way that I would hear it, because we did already pass a motion regarding the meeting dates. I think the question, the way that I hear it, is more of a question of whether or not we need to call special sessions or special meetings to be responsive to, for example, the historic budget in terms of child and family services and programs, which would be not necessarily changing the first 5 meeting schedule, but really thinking, okay, are there specific things that we want to come together to address in a special session or a special meeting, similar to how we had a retreat to bring all of the commission together to get to know each other. So. And I think that's something that we can, we'd love to hear. I would love to hear your input now.
Saying that you can talk about special meetings. Yes, you're getting a
Yes.
thumbs up from, it's not yes, special meetings, absolutely, we can discuss. We just gotta, it's fine to proceed. Thank you for reframing.
I meant to say that. I apologize to the staff. I did. I meant to say special meetings, and instead I used more meetings. I meant special meetings that are perhaps focused on a specific topic that we've been, building more off of what Commissioner Hazen said around, maybe we do one on finance and then a special meeting on how to take the equity work further. It's, where it allows us to have that higher quality interaction, which we had today, but it's true. It starts to be difficult to sustain. So sorry about that.
Commissioner Majors, you've had your hand up for a little bit now that we've gone the legal authority to proceed.
Yeah, that's okay. And I'd be fine with special meetings or whatever you want to call them. But I will say, I felt like we've been sort of in a perpetual cycle of either new commissioners, coming up to speed, including myself, or new business. And I just wonder, I'm more on the side of productivity and efficiency than I am of more. Because I feel like we do spend a lot of time trying to, remind us what this is, remind us what our charter is and what we're supposed to do. And I just wonder, I know we did have a retreat recently, but I just wonder if there's a way to really get us to sort of a level playing ground. And so as we sort of approach these topics, we are better aligned and to have those sort of business discussions, have our level playing ground, our starting place. Of course, it all requires us to read and be prepared, with all the materials you and the staff prepare. But I also think as we get through these conversations, to Chair Burke Harris's comment, moving things off the agenda that we don't have to talk about so that we can have the opportunity for the dialogue. And as I try to monitor myself, and I'm sure we all do in our respective leadership roles, making it very succinct in terms of where are we trying to get with this particular topic and what process do we need to go through. Because I think, again, we have a lot of really healthy, good conversation, but a lot of times it's informing each other, reminding each other. And I think that is important, but it does take a lot of our time.
So what I think I heard Commissioner say is going forward, not that every year isn't a big year, but we have a big year right now with a lot of possibilities. So as we think about specific topics that possibly having more intense focused meetings, topical meetings might be a good way, shorter topical meetings, not all day commission meetings, but might be a good way to move forward, while at the same time, to Commissioner Major's point, to get us all on a level playing field and to streamline meetings as much as we can so that we're staying pretty focused on the work. So Commissioner Fitzgerald has her hand up.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things about having special meetings and streamlining, but also too, maybe sometimes because Max, you did a wonderful job. I always appreciate the tremendous amount of work you put into these reports, and I'm super fascinated by it all. But this report always comes at the end of the day. And is there a way maybe sometimes we flip it and have legislation earlier where we can all say, what can I do? How can I get involved? We all want to, I think, further the legislative agenda, but it does always come at the end. And so maybe sometimes that's another thing that we can start to do a little bit, just an idea.
I like that idea. If I could, I would second it. Well, I think as we started talking earlier about the role of First Five in being a change agent at a systems level, really does become about policy, right? In as much as some of the other projects, programming that we do. And so I think it does speak to the growing importance of some of this work, especially during times like these when we've passed significant budgets, things like that. So I think that's something we could maybe explore, but I'll defer to Camille and the team as we work on planning future agendizing.
And if it's okay, I'm just going to jump in to add one other thing, which is that it's a great reminder to us that the historic budget is in response to historic need. And we really are in, we are emerging from a global public health crisis, which also was a family crisis. And so I think that when we're thinking about having special meetings, it really, for me, is about, as our governor says, meeting the moment where we really see a huge need, and there's an opportunity for us to leverage the very special role that we play to be part of healing forward and building back better. So. And with that, I will move to see if there's any, or not move to, but check if there's any public comments. I'm looking at Camille and Jackie.
No.
All right. And so with that, I move to adjourn the commission meeting and thank all of you for your service and your contribution. Is there a second?
Second.
Jamie, can you?
No, that's not, we don't need a roll. We don't need a roll call, but
Oh,
you dispense with the agenda, so you technically don't need to vote. We can just log off.
Well, yes, the motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Oh, my notes say I need to call for vote, but that's okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
You don't have to call roll.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye. Good to be with you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.